Okay.
Usually takes a little bit to connect. The meeting is recorded, and I think you don't have a problem with that we use the content and us later on
No, not at all.
to promote your business.
That would be a little funny. I'm willing to talk to you on a podcast, but I really don't want it out there on the internet.
Oh, really?
No, that would be funny. That would be a funny statement to make.
These days you never know. So
you never know. That's right. That's right.
So, I'm on a podcast and you didn't tell me that it's recorded. So,
yeah. Well, I don't mind. I'm not a fugitive hiding from the law, so I don't mind at all.
That's good to know. Lionel, good to see you. How are you doing today?
Doing very well. Doing very well. And pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm a fan of your podcast.
Oh, thank you very much.
Quite a few of them and very informative, very insightful. I really like the long form podcasts, and I'd never have time to watch the whole thing. So I watch like about 20 minutes of it, and then I got to go do something else. And maybe when I'm cooking some food or something, I'll watch another 20 minutes. Yeah.
I think this is the great thing with podcasts these days, that you can just listen in for a couple of minutes, then do something else, walk away. And when you feel that the podcast or that the episode provides value to your life, you can always come back and listen the next 5 to 10 minutes.
That's right. Yeah. It's great that way. When I was growing up, it wasn't like that. It was just TV was on, or you missed the show.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's back. I remember 70s, 80s back then. When the show was over, it was over. There was we didn't even have the possibility to record for a very long time.
Yeah, we didn't have the possibility of recording. I would go to school and people would be talking about a show, and I didn't watch. And what, you didn't watch that? No. Oh, well, you missed it. Your fear of missing out starts creeping in your TV. My dad wasn't very big on TV, though. He didn't like TV.
Oh, really? Why that?
He thought that it was sort of delivering content to the lower element of the general intelligence of the public, and he thought it was dumbing people down.
And do you agree with that statement?
Well, there's some things I obviously I don't watch TV at all now, right? But I do have a video on demand, and there is some things where I just think I just want to watch something sort of dumb and just entertaining. I don't really want to think, and I appreciate that. There are some things that I watch and I think this is really stupid. I'm not going to watch this. Then I go back over to YouTube and find a long form podcast discussion and watch that and try to learn something.
Let me ask you the first question. What motivates you to be on podcast? What motivates you to use the tool?
Well, in my business, it's really good to have as high profile as possible. What we are trying to do, what we are working on doing of empowering creatives, the more we can get, this is who we are, this is what we stand for, this is what we're doing out there, then it brings a lot more people to us, and it strengthens the group that we sort of represent and we work with.
That's good to hear. When somebody listens in today, we are live on LinkedIn, we are live on YouTube, and also Twitch and X.com and Facebook.
Wow.
When someone listens in today, what 3 core messages do you want to deliver in this podcast?
Well, it's mainly like I said, we're SyncLodge is focused on empowering creatives, and this has been a vision of mine for a long time. And so I think if my experience, if it can help people, if it can help them navigate towards a sustainable career in the entertainment industry, whether it's visual, whether it's music, and if I can, save them a few pain points along the way from experience, that would be really great. And hopefully they don't get bored by a over 60-year-old man rambling on about too much.
I don't think so. You have a lot to share. Tell me more about your journey. You're in the entertainment industry and had a development from musician to a CEO of a tech company. How was the journey?
How did that happen? That's so I've been basically in the entertainment industry all my life. My dad was in it. My dad was a DJ on the first pirate radio station in the early 60s out of the UK called Radio Caroline. And so as growing up, 2 years old, he's working with the Rolling Stones, and I think maybe the Who weren't around by then, but in the 60s, we worked with the Rolling Stones, the Who, interviewed the Beatles, all these sort of the Kinks, all these sort of bands that came out then. And for me, it was just a natural thing. This is the way life is. I didn't really compute that not everybody experiences this. Right? For me, this is just what life was, and so it was a natural thing just to go into it. I started on the piano and then moved over to the saxophone and then the bass guitar and then 6-string guitar and always vocals. Always wanted to sing. And I was writing from a very early age. And before I even knew I was writing, I used to just say, 3 years old, changing the words to Rolling Stones songs so they fit my world. I didn't really understand their world, so I changed the words to fit what's going on in my world. And along the way, I would see things that I thought, now I do use this word, and some people get offended by it. Some people, I don't use this word towards people. I use it towards situations, and the word is stupid. And I would find things that I thought were stupid. If that's the way that's done, that's the way that's how what's happening. Well, that's kind of stupid, right? We have to fix that. That doesn't make any sense to me. Why is that happening that way? And so I build a company and try to answer it. And over years, I've had quite a few different companies. And then I will get to a point where the company, 2 of them I sold, 2 of them I had nice exits on. Other ones I just got, I don't want to run a live booking venue anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to play guitar. So I close it down and I go and just go back to the music side. It's something that there have been times where it seems I've made a very positive impact. Right. At other times it seems I just made myself older and more tired and stressed.
What you said that you found some situation that you considered as stupid and you wanted to change about something. What I'm curious to hear is why did you decide when you see a situation that you think needs changing? Why did you decide to do it as an entrepreneur? I mean, I'm in Vienna, so the usual way here in Vienna is when people say, okay, this is stupid, politics is stupid, or the situation is stupid, or this is broken with the economy, they just complain and don't feel the spark or the urge to turn their complaint into market research, find out if more people have this problem, and then provide a solution. You said that you're a musician, basically, and what moved you from being a musician to deciding I now do something about the situation and start a company? What was this moment of decision?
They were all music entertainment industry focused. So it was like one of the companies that I started in the 90s was a live music booking agency, and I just started that just out of the because I was doing it for myself. And I was booking a lot of shows, and I make a poster with like 30 different shows on it. And then every place, my thinking was it would make people see that, oh, I'm not just a one-time, right? We're playing a whole bunch of places, so maybe they'll come down and see us. Right? And bands started asking me how I did that. And I said, or who did it for me was the first question. I said, I did. And well, could you do it for me? And I realized that the big companies, and this was in the UK, the big companies in London, they were not taking artists and building their careers. They were not nurturing their careers in any way. What they were doing is they were taking artists that could fill these places and then becoming their agent and just managing the business of it. Right? And in England, this was back in the mid-early 90s, so many bands, so many great bands, and struggling to get their head above the pubs. Right? They could play pubs, but to get the next level, they didn't know how to do that. And so I thought, okay, well, but that's simple, right? That's simple, right? You go around in an area and you play and you get up a following. And then next time around, you go to the bigger place. And the next time around, you go to the bigger place, right? And you just keep, as soon as it's packed and there's not enough space for the people to come in, then you go to the next size place. And so I just started, I started working with bands, and I would ask them for their venues. And I'd say, you tell me what venues you book yourself into, and we'll take that, so I don't take a percentage. I can still book you into that. You can book yourself into it. It's up to you, but then I don't take a percentage. That's your territory. You're already playing there. And with that, then I get a whole list of venues. Then I get in touch with the venues and ask them about who the venue owner, who their favorite local bands were. And then they happily give me a list, right? And then I go to the band and say, what places are you playing? And I just grew this.
Mhm.
After 2 years, I had like 10 people working for me, and we had 850 bands, 1,200 DJs booking. We had exclusive through many venues around the UK. So we just give them bands. We just send them the posters. We didn't even have to check with them. Um, we just built it up. So a band could come in at whatever level they were at of fame or notoriety, and then we could just send them around maybe once, maybe twice, and then take them up to the next level and up to the next level. And this really worked. Now, it did upset some of the bigger companies in London because I was booking their bands all of a sudden because I had exclusivity over a lot of venues.
Mhm.
And the difference was with that also is booking agents, and it's nothing against them, but it's a tough job, and a lot of them, it makes them so they're short tempered and impatient, which makes them into a bit of a jerk. And some of them are quite sarcastic and condescending. And I'm not. So the venues really like dealing with me. So they say, hey, we want to get EMF into this concert hall. Right? Could you get them? I say, yeah, I'm sure I can. And then deal with their agency in London. And they got quite upset with that. And really did get upset until the point where one of them bought us.
Let me ask you one question. You said that, I mean, you've built a business with 2,000, I said 800 musicians, 800 bands, 1,200 DJs on your list,
Yeah,
and you just grew it. More people, more bands, more venues.
yeah,
And then you came to the point that the big companies, I interpret it in that way, became upset because you took business away from them.
yeah.
How was it for you to experience that? I mean, your work is great and people like it, but there is a certain part of society that doesn't like it so much. How was it for you?
Uh, I, I thought it was fun. I thought it was just like, yeah, look, we're upsetting them. Sony or the different record labels would invite me into London to see one of their new bands, and I'll be there, and I know different agents were in the room. And one time, while I'm talking to a guy from Sony, this guy comes up and really accosts me. I'm questioning. I won't swear on the show, but he was swearing. Asked me who the blank I am, and I told him who I am. He goes, "I know you're blanking Lionel Lodge from blanking, and but who the blank are you?" And I recognized who he was, right, by his voice, because I talked to him on the phone quite a few times. And I said, "Oh, you're so and so. I'm the guy that's making 15% off your 10%. And you know why? Because you're an a-hole and I'm not." And it was just, I felt that I was raised by very altruistic parents,
Mhm.
and make the world a better place. Leave people feeling better than you found them. That sort of thing, right? And so my idea was, if I can set a precedent of to be a booking agent, the key of it is to be nice. That would be a great thing,
Mhm.
right? So then I just play with them on that, right? When I meet these guys, I just play with them, and what do I have to lose? They worked in London, England, very condensed city, small office spaces. I lived in the countryside in the Cotswolds, and my office window looked out on a field with cows in it.
Ah, beautiful, beautiful.
Right. So that gave me a totally different energy.
Yeah. You said kindness. You grew up with parents who taught you that it's important that you live better, you leave people better than you found them, basically in every interaction. I grew
Mhm.
up in Austria, and especially Vienna has a reputation for doing exactly the opposite. How important is kindness, in your opinion, in business, if you want to grow a successful business?
Well, it really comes down to who am I, right? Am I a businessman that's trying to make money, or am I a human being that's trying to live up to my own ideals of who I am? And if I, the person I don't want to disappoint that way is myself, right? And we all have regrets, and I look back on different times in my life and I think, yeah, I was kind of a jerk at that point, wasn't I, when I talked to that person? And those are my main regrets of being negative to other people. And so it is something that really comes down to who I am. And if people like that for the business, if it's good for the business, great. And it seems to be working. Most people in the entertainment industry want to have a positive feeling about the business that they're doing. I think most people in business want to have a positive feeling about the business they're doing. They want to like the people they're doing business with. Right? They want to have some sort of thing. If it's just money and I can't stand this person, but I'm going to make tons of money out. Well, I pity you, and if that's your agenda, that's
Yeah, being a little bit nicer is definitely a good choice. You developed your business in the 90s of the last century.
mhm.
It was before the start of the internet.
Yes.
Is that right? How did you experience with your business the
Well,
internet? Did it have an immediate impact, or didn't you
well,
feel
the
it so
booking
much?
agency, like the business I'm running now, we actually registered this in 2019.
Mhm.
Right? So it's not that old. But the businesses I had in the UK, like the booking agency, we were posting things out. Right? It was all by the post. Right? People would send us checks in the post. Right? It was all by the post
Good
and
old
telephone.
days.
Yeah, all post and telephones. I remember when AOL first came over to the UK, and I had an account. And the problem was, is nobody I knew had an email account. I had one, but then nobody else has one. It's kind of like, yeah, okay, I'll wait for them to catch up.
Yeah, I remember those days. Posts, mails, normal posting meant normal mails, and inviting people meant sending a few thousand mails and doing all the hard work manually. Now
Yeah.
it's so easy. How did your business change in the 90s with the start of the internet?
Well,
Um,
it really came in when I was running. I started a entertainment magazine. That was my second big business in the UK, and it was like a lifestyle magazine. And
mhm,
it was in London. There was a thing called Time Out, and they were dealing with, and there was Enemy and Melody making the music press. But outside of London, there wasn't really any music press. So to get written about, especially on a live footing, you had to go into London to play, and hopefully these guys come down, and they're very busy, and everybody's inviting them down to their shows. So it was very hard to get coverage outside of London. And so I started this magazine called Now that was basically everywhere but London. Right? We didn't touch London, and we had different sections for different topics. Of if your heart beat, then there was something in there in the Now magazine for you. We had one on cooking, we had one on rock bands, we had theater, we had films, we had uh, poetry, literature, movies, and each one of these sections had somebody that was an expert in that section, and then they built their editorial team. Right? And when the internet started coming in, we were thinking, it was quite a bit of money to print every month.
mhm. Yeah,
Right?
true. That's
It was
true.
a lot of money, right, every month to print this, and we were thinking, with the internet, we wouldn't have to print it anymore. We just put it online, right? And still, we were making money off the advertising. We didn't sell the magazine, right? You could just pick it up for free, right?
Mhm.
Totally free, right? All the money was advertised, which really pissed off the local. There was a newspaper network. There was owned many newspapers, and we started taking all their advertising. They got really upset with us, and they were also the people printing us, which was made some fun games that they tried playing on us, and eventually they bought us, so that worked out okay.
This is it's an amazing story. I mean, there is on one part you said that your parents taught you to be kind to people. And in business, especially when you do something disruptive, like you did with the magazine, with the print magazine, and also with the booking agency, it's natural that some people start fearing you because you take away business from them,
Yeah,
and
we
you
upset.
are more successful. How can you handle that? I mean, on one hand, you have the philosophy: be kind to people and get along well with them, and on the other side, in business, there are always the haters. They say, "Okay, I don't like what you do." How do you handle that internally?
Well, like with the magazine, we had quite a few. There was meetings that we had to have because of the printing, and they were upsetting us, and we had to go in and I had to talk to them. And I just would ask them, "Have you read it? Do you like it?" Right? And our to balance it, I would maybe it wasn't fair of me because I was stressing this small group of people out, that were running this business that were disrupting, but we were making a whole bunch of people happy.
Mhm.
Poets in the UK getting major coverage on their new poetry book, right? Things like this, right? Making very and people were interested in this, and but we were making a lot of people happy. We had a lot of people just telling us they loved it. They absolutely loved it. So, you like the old saying is, you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. I've always been And we put it with SyncLodge, we put it up front, empowering creatives. But I've always had that as a base thing with me. Of creative, I think creativity is the fundamental core element of human beings, and we have to
Mhm.
recognize that. We have to make it so that we empower it, we support it. It's not just the old thing of, oh, you're a musician so you don't have a job, right? There's the old joke, it's gender orientated, which I've tried to rewrite it, but it doesn't seem to, I can't seem to do that. But there's a joke of, what's a drummer without a girlfriend?
I don't know.
Homeless. Right. Right. So there's that attitude towards it, and I've always been, well, music is the greatest form of communication humankind has ever made, and we have to empower this. We have to respect it. We have to treasure it. The way it makes us feel. If you ever
Mhm.
watch a movie without any music in it, it's a totally different experience than with the music. Right? So I've always had that, and so with the magazine and upsetting the great big newspaper chain, yeah, okay.
You could live with it.
I can live with it.
I specifically asked the question because I hear this very often from entrepreneurs who say, okay, I mean, I want to do good in the world and I want to help people, but there is always a certain part who don't like it. And also when you look at social media, influencers, for example, I mean, with LinkedIn, with X.com, with TikTok, young people get incredibly successful in a couple of months when they just produce great content. And it's also, in my
Mhm,
opinion, a new form of art.
mhm,
But they're always the haters. Then immediately you see in their comment section people pop up who fight against them and they say what you do sucks and it's not good at all. And I
mhm,
think they can learn a lot from people like you with experience, how to handle that when they get negative feedback, when they get
mhm.
negative emotions. In your story, I heard and I interpreted in that way that out of this negativity, deals evolved so that
Yes,
you basically were acquired by
yes,
two competitors.
yeah, but by the incumbent competitors that really did not like us coming up and just messing with their really nicely easy going. We don't have to think too much. We're just rolling through this business, and yeah, me coming along and go, well, how about we do it this way? What do you think? The nice thing with SyncLodge is the only competitor that we have is like the status quo of workflow tools like Excel files and stuff like this. And
Mhm.
Microsoft is not going to be hurt by us in any way, shape, or form. So nobody's going to be upset that way.
Before we dive into your current company, let's stay with the other two stories, with the other
Yeah,
two
sure,
companies.
sure.
Um, you turned, so you had this booking agency and you had this print magazine.
Mhm.
You grew them, both companies, and
Yes, without any investment.
without any investment. And at a certain point, the local current heroes were frightened by you and were angry and aggressive. How did you take this energy and turn it into a deal then?
Because we just kept going. Okay, they are nervous about us because we're doing it right. And what I felt it was is they don't want to have to do it our way, and that's what's upsetting them. And if we keep
Mhm.
going in this direction, they will have to do it our way. Right? This our way we think is better, and the only way to see if whether or not we were right about that is the reaction in the outside world. Right? And the reaction was very positive.
Mhm.
And so it was like, okay, this is the way to do this. This is really the way to do this. And there, I found it like that time in that club in London with the guy swearing at me. Um, I just found it to be quite sort of amusing in a way that first of all, business is business. To get so upset about it on a personal level, I feel okay. Maybe you're in the wrong job, right? Maybe maybe you should meditate or something, right? Maybe you should. If I had the time with the guy, I probably would have gone in that direction. You
Mm.
know, he says, I'm sure underneath all of that, you're a nice guy, but it doesn't come across. So maybe you should think about that. How does your girlfriend treat you? Or do you have a girlfriend? Maybe you don't have a girlfriend because of the way you act. Maybe you should think about that. Do you want kids? I'm sure if I had talked to that one guy like that, he probably would have jumped on me and
It would be funny to handle a negotiation that way, is asking these questions.
yeah, yeah. But with when it came down to negotiations, it was like, okay, as soon as they're talking about acquiring us, the question is, how long will it take for us to acquire them?
Mhm.
That's the thought that comes into my mind. How long, if we keep going like this, will we actually own them? Right? And if that's the possibility, then we have nothing to lose. If there's a possibility for that to happen, we have nothing to lose. We're not hungry at all. We can just, but it did on both occasions. It did come at a point where I just thought, I just want to play guitar and sing. I'm tired of working 18 hours a day doing this.
Mhm.
Well, I'm just tired of doing this. So I just want to play guitar and sing and write songs. And so the offers were good enough that I just went, yeah, okay, let's do that. And both of them dismantled the companies. Both of them, they didn't continue them. They basically just got rid of us.
Yeah, so basically they bought the competition from the market so that you are not
Yeah.
a threat anymore.
They turned the magazine into the Sunday supplement, a weekly Sunday supplement inside their newspaper. Right. And it was like 2% of what it used to be. And, okay, that's their business. And
How do I mean you jump back and forth between music and entrepreneurship. How
mhm.
do you balance your two personalities? On one hand, the business leader, on the other hand, the musician. How is this internal
Yeah, it's
dynamic?
difficult. It's not, well, business is very creative as well. There's a very creative side to business, right? And I'm very passionate about what I don't do anything unless I'm passionate about it. But behind me here is my guitar, which is my first wife,
Mhm.
and I've had her since 1987. And she's actually, I like to say, she's gotten very upset with me, and she's learned swear words. When I walk into the room, she does curse me down as the guy that just abandoned her, right? And I don't pay her any more attention. But it is. I wake up in the morning thinking about, okay, today I'm doing this and today I'm doing that, and it's music has become something. I used to wake up in the morning and write songs. First 4 hours each day, I'll just be writing and playing and writing. Now I wake up in the morning and I check emails and I reply to people and I talk to the development team and I think about the next strategies and the next steps and what we should be doing. And so it doesn't seem to be painful to me. But when I do go out and play live, I remember how much I enjoy it,
Mhm.
how wonderful it feels. And that's just something I just go, oh, geez, I really miss this. Yeah.
What makes being on stage as a musician so interesting? What is the energy in that?
Well, it's the communication, right? So here in Vienna. I'm based in Vienna too. I
Mhm.
don't know if you, yeah, okay. And here in Vienna, I've got a group of musicians that are just wonderful musicians that I'm very very fortunate to be able to play with, and it's just that energy of communicating the music with through these people, right? And they're all great players on their instruments, and and then the energy back from the audience. It's like you get into this thing where it's everybody starts getting lifted up, right? And it's more than just a movie, because a movie can take you out of your reality for a period of time, right? But movies, a lot of times, there's a drama twist, there's the
Mhm.
conflict, and then it gets resolved, that sort of thing, right? So there's some stress and conflict in movies. With music, it's just flow, and it's just, and also mentally and emotionally, there's a thing that musicians call the zone. And when you just go into that, it's like the song plays you. It's just like this flow that happens, and it's just a most wonderful experience. Sometimes I can't tell after 10 songs if we played 2 songs or 15 songs. I'm not really sure. Um, it's just you just flowing through it. And one of the things that I do for playing is I don't. A lot of bands, they'll make a set list, right? We're going to do two sets, and this is the first set songs and second set songs. And what I do is I don't even choose the first song before I get to the venue. And when I get to the venue and we're doing sound check and I get a feel for it, I think, okay, well, we should start with this song. And I'll have a list on the stage, and I have hundreds of songs I've written, and a list on the stage that's all my songs, right? That's the whole thing. And somewhere in that first song, it'll be obvious what the next song should be, and then the next song, obvious what for the one after that, right? And it just really depends on how the people react and how the whole band's working, the sound and everything, right? And yeah, it's amazingly joyful experience. The only negative of it is afterwards it takes a long time to come down.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. This is why drugs and alcohol are a big problem in the entertainment industry. Because what do? You just had all this energy flowing through you for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and then now you're in your hotel room, right? And TV is just it's not going to cut it, right? What am I going to do? I'm just up. I'm just up, right? And that's a thing. I tend to here in Vienna. What I do is I take the transit to the show, and then I'll take the transit back most of the way, and
Mhm.
then walk the rest, and just walk. And just walk. And by the time I get home, I'm quite tired. And I can go
So
sleep.
on stage, you get into a special energy field.
Mm,
And this is the reason why musicians enjoy playing longer. I mean, I experience very often at shows that musicians, I think the Ärzte are well known for that, the German band.
mm,
It's more a punk band, and they sometimes kept playing for 7, 8 hours. I think it was 20 years ago, so I was on a concert
mm.
from them, and they just played one song after the other, and I was just wondering, I mean, from the business side, it doesn't make any sense because I
Right.
mean, your 30 minutes are over. It was a festival, and they were the last act of the night, and they just kept playing until the morning dawned and until the first morning light. And I always wondered why do they do that? Why? I mean,
Right.
they don't get paid for that, and
It's
the crowd
just
loved it.
yeah. Yeah, and the crowd loves it and the feeling and the energy. And do you want it to stop?
Mm,
You know, that's the thing. And inside venues, there is a time that they have to stop. The staff wants to go home,
mm.
right? They're going to close it down. You have to stop. And it's always like, the people want some more. The people, so you get an encore, right? Zugabe, Zugabe. And so you play, and that's always joyful. And you play some more. And, last time I played, we went past, the people told us, you have to stop at this time, right? And 15 minutes later, the place has to be empty, right? And we went after the time when the place was supposed to be empty. We were still playing. And we're just doing one more song, and it's a very, very soft song called "The Greatest Thrill of Them All." And it's just a picking part, and I sing it low, and it's very soft. And the person behind the bar started cleaning the cutlery and picking up big handfuls of cutlery and dropping them down on a chopping board, and then like wiping them off and throwing them in a drawer, and just making this clanking noise that just totally destroyed it. Right?
It's in Vienna, I guess. Oh,
It's
was it?
Indiana,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
in the 17th district. And I thought, yeah, okay. Yeah, she wants to go home. And we've gone way over. Okay.
This was a definite sign of she not being happy with having to stay. It's a
That's right.
Viennese way, Viennese
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
But have you ever analyzed on a rational basis, on a logical basis, what happens in people with music? So what's going on in them
Mhm.
uh, beyond just saying it's energy? Do you understand why
I,
this energy
I
is not
think I
flowing?
think I do. Like one of the things about our moods and our emotions is that if you are depressed or sad,
Mhm,
it affects the flow of on a cellular level inside your whole throughout your whole body,
mhm.
right? So long-term depression can be very physically damaging. It's not just a
That's true.
mental thing, right? And to laugh, to be happy, to have it feel exhilarated, it energizes on a cellular level. It's a very, very healthy thing to do. And so for the musicians themselves, it's like such a wonderful, healthy thing just to be playing this stuff and loving it, and with people that you love as well, and you love the way they play, and the whole thing feels great. But I think it is just generally on a cellular level. It just fires everything off. It just makes it so, positive energy throughout, right down to your toes, inside your bones.
So learning an instrument or singing might also help change mental states like depression.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think so. Also, learning an instrument. There's been many studies on this that at an early age, children, one of the best things for them to learn an instrument for the way their brain develops, the
Mhm.
actual cognitive ability of the brain. It's a multiplier, right? And there's been studies on this that is just, it's an obvious thing. There's something about the way the logic behind it, and also with the music, with the sort of the instinctual element. It's not just math, even though music is very mathematical.
Mhm.
right? It's not just math. So it's this is one of the things I've been pushing quite a bit in my life of any schools. Teach your children how to play an instrument and get them to love it. Don't force them to it. Let them find an instrument they love and give them the lessons and teach them. Every,
Let me try to make a counter argument. So I understood you in a way that you said learning an instrument is good for you. It makes you happy, and when you practice regularly, you can gather people, you can form a band, you can make other people happy, and it's generally a good experience to have in life. You don't need to be the next whatever Metallica or Guns N'
Mhm,
Roses or Rolling Stones or opera singer,
mhm.
just for you and for your environment. So when I talk to people in Vienna, I might get the counter argument, yeah, but it takes such a long time. So I need to practice every day for hours, and I don't have the time for that. In your opinion, when someone wants to start with the piano or with guitar, how long does it take to experience this positivity in life that you
But
described?
it can come very early. When I first started playing the piano, I was a very young kid, and I just loved the fact that when I first learned to chord,
Mhm.
these notes harmonizing together, right? I just love that, right? But they do say that get proficient, to become not really an expert, but to get proficient, to get very good on anything in life, generally they say it's about 10,000 hours.
Mhm.
Now that's a lot of time. But then I say to somebody, okay, yes, but how much time do you spend watching TV, watching films?
I think everybody has mastered that.
Yeah, how much time do you spend on other things that maybe don't give you as much joy? But it's I don't think I'm a real advocate for children to learn an instrument, but I don't think everybody should just everybody should have an instrument that they can play and they spend time doing this. I think there's also other ways to be happy.
Mhm.
Right? It's not the end all.
I mean, I believe in what you said that you can create genuine happiness with playing an instrument or also running sports, but it's more hard work. Did, do you have a theory why, for example, watching Netflix is so much more appealing? I mean, people can watch Netflix for hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, no problem. But practicing guitar, many people might struggle and say, okay, I mean,
Yeah,
it's so hard. It's so hard. Do you have
I
a
think that's the
theory?
key. I think that's the key because at first it is hard, but then anything worth doing is hard.
Mhm.
You want to do anything in life that's worthwhile. That's what actually bring you forward in life and your experience and your awareness is difficult. I always like the I use the phrase, if you're going to climb a mountain, why climb a small one? Well, what's the point of that, right? Climb a mountain. And watching Netflix or watching any sort of visual entertainment, it draws you in, and you for a while you're actually living somebody else's life. So it's escapism. It's like a drug in a way, right? You're
Mhm.
escaping to somebody else's, and you think the poor hero of the story, he or she is, making mistakes, and then they finally win in the end. So you feel really good about it, right? You feel really good at the end because they've come along and they've actually, that something's great, and you were pulling for them, and oh, that was such a feel good movie. But and I've nothing against visual entertainment. I love it in many ways, but it doesn't change your life.
Mhm.
Right? It might give you an example to live your life by. It might give you some sort of lesson inside the story, But as far as really changing your life, I don't really see it. But maybe I'm wrong on that actually, because there are some movies that have changed people's lives. That's true. I tend to do that. I tend to make a statement and then tell myself, no, that's not really true.
Having conversations with oneself is a great thing to do. I completely agree to that. So it pays off for people if they just practice 5 minutes, 10 minutes per week without the demand to be a famous musician at the end of the day. It's just improving your own life
Yeah, just to
through
enjoy.
practice. Yeah.
Just to enjoy. And I would say, find a time in the day, right? In each day, find a time. Is it before you have a shower? After you brush your teeth in the morning time? Go to that instrument and play for a little bit. We have a neighbor upstairs here
Mhm.
who is must be in his 80s somewhere, and he plays the clarinet and the violin, and he plays it every morning for about an hour.
Oh, really?
Yeah, every morning. Now, okay, first he played the clarinet for a long time. I hope he doesn't watch this because I'm going to say something here. He played the clarinet for a long time. That was pretty good, but he would squeak sometimes. And then he started learning the violin. And the violin, you can be off note very easily, right?
Mm.
But sometimes it's like, yeah, yeah, okay. But he's a wonderful guy, and he gets joy from it. So no negative feelings about that. But sometimes I just think I'll play the clarinet a little more.
So it's more the learning process. He's in his 80s and he starts a new instrument,
Yeah,
basically.
and he's
And not the
practicing.
easiest one.
Not the easiest one at all. And he's playing Mozart stuff. He's playing the Vienna Ball. He's playing the Blue Danube. He's playing these things, and he goes through it slowly and slowly over weeks. Several weeks goes through it.
Yeah,
Right?
it's not easy, but it helps people to develop, to stay young, to
Mhm.
keep practicing, keep the mind practicing. You have this conflict. It looks to me that like you have this conflict in your life. On one hand, you're an entrepreneur and you love it and you seem to enjoy it. On the other hand, when you're into entrepreneurship, you miss the stage and the energy that you get from playing with people. And still, you decided to do both in your life, and you created your next company or your actual company, SyncLodge. What is this
Mhm.
company doing?
So this is the biggest one I've done, and this is so. I'll just back up a little bit. In the mid 2000s, with Napster coming in, which was a big thing of people just downloading music, I realized that at that point I was living very comfortably off my music. I was playing, recording CDs, selling them, all of that, and I realized, okay, this is a big change. This is going to, one person buys a CD and shares it with 1,000. Okay, that's gonna and so I started looking at other things. I looked at something that's called sync licensing, which is the licensing of music in visual production, so TV, film, video games, and advertising. On the professional level. You also have micro licensing, like in YouTube and TikTok and stuff. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about on the professional side. And started looking at that and going to conferences and started licensing my music for visual productions and meeting a lot of people and getting insights on the industry. Some people asked me, like with the booking agency, who did that for you? And I said, I did. And they said, could you do it for me? And so the next thing I knew, I had a boutique sync licensing music agency, right? And I called it Vienna Calling. And it was just Austrian-based music. Some agencies were going for genre, right? They have this, and I just thought I'm just going to represent as much as I can Austria, right? And so I'm going to do that. And there were I had quite a few artists and a few record labels. And but during that, I saw how what they call the music supervisors, who are the people that are licensing the music. They work for the visual production companies, and they do a lot of things. But one of the things they do is they find and license music for like a TV show to be
Mhm.
used. And I saw how they're working, and I thought, really? Well, that's really stupid. Like, why are you working? Why really? That's how you're working? Those are the tools you're using. That must be, and you're doing like 8 different films at once. How do you do that? Like, there must be a better way of doing this. There must be. So I looked for it, and then when I didn't find it, I wrote down pages of how the industry should work from my perspective, and I got that down to one page. And I went to the heads of Universal, Sony, and Warner Brothers in London, who I knew, and I said to them, "This is what I'm thinking of doing. This is going to be a lot of work. Please tell me it's a really stupid, bad idea and save me a whole bunch of years of pain and anguish and frustration. Please tell me." And they looked at it and said, "Well, if you think of doing that, that would be great. Really, you can do. You're thinking of doing that? Okay, okay, okay." That was January 2018.
Mhm.
Right? I don't know how to code. I've never run a tech company. In the booking agency, we had a tech guy that in-house management of things, right? We had a system, right? But I would just tell him it should do this and it should do that, right? And so I put together a team. I put our CTO, and he had developers. We found also one of the things that, and I put this out there to anybody that's starting a company, a very smart thing to do, a huge cost for starting a company and all along the way is legal, right? Paying your lawyer to draw up those contracts. Now, the first thing was the terms and conditions for people to use the platform. And I went around law offices and they said, 15,000 euro, 18,000 euro to do your terms and conditions. And I said, well, I can write them, right? I just want, if you could just go over it and just tell me, if there's anything missing on the legal perspective and just fix that. And they said, no, we want to write it. And so through somebody that I knew, got to know this person's Stacy Haber is her name. 30 years as a lawyer in the entertainment industry. Started in New York, now in London, England. Brought her in as a partner. Right? That was one of the smartest things I did. Because we draw up contracts, we look at contracts with other people and everything, and it's not okay. Really, that took you 12 hours to do, and I got to pay you €500 an hour. Really? I don't like situations like that. Right? So, and she's a great person, and she's one of the directors of the company. So the idea was on both sides, the creatives are being exhausted, being frustrated, was a lot of friction in the industry, and it's a creative industry. And I thought, well, that's not cool, right? Like you have these creative people, and they just want to work on this way, but they've got all this administrative work that they have to do, and it's really frustrating. There's also the situation where there's maybe like 1,200, 1,500 professional music supervisors globally. Mm-hmm. It's that small of a number, okay? But there's probably somewhere maybe even more than 10 million music creators and people representing music and libraries and publishing companies and record companies and independent artists. It's somewhere around 10 million, maybe it's more. So how does that work? Right? It's like the person with 10 bananas, and there's 10 million monkeys, and they all want a banana, right? Like how does that work, right? So our system is designed to make it so that flow is a lot easier for everybody, and that was one of the things, to make it so we level the playing field, which wasn't easy.
What was broken in the music industry that your solution is, or what your solution is solving? What was the broken thing?
Well, it was one of the parts was simply that. So, a music supervisor, if they share their contact information, then they get hundreds and hundreds of emails every day, every day, right? Nonstop. Listen to my music. Here's a playlist. Listen to my music. And then the follow-up email. Did you like it? I haven't heard back from you. The week later, why don't you write me back the week after that? Maybe it's just days in between, right? And that effect is draining for the music supervisors, but also for the music creators, because there's no way they can answer them, right? So all of a sudden I sent stuff out, and the obvious reaction after a bit is, okay, I'm not good at this. My music is not very good, right? I should just stop. Right? It's crushing in a way, right? And we live in this world with streaming, where there's no money in streaming, especially for independent artists. There's no money at all in it. Right? It's 0.003 cents if you're lucky per stream. So do the math on that. I used to sell 4,000 or 5,000 CDs out of I record a new CD, and over time I sell 4,000 or 5,000 of them. Not a big number, but that was good money. 5,000 at €20 each, right? That's 100,000. Right? That's pretty good money, right? Right. So that's the revenue, right? But my profit margins, I think, were around 70%, right? So that was very good. But with streaming, there's no money in it. So then you have this huge number of creatives that are leaving the industry, and this is a big problem. So what our system does is it makes it so we have no barriers for entry. There's also other systems in the sync licensing sector that they charge a subscription fee. Come to us, pay us this money per month. And we've had music in television shows in Netflix and Amazon Prime. We've had all this sort of stuff. And every time we get a situation where it's called a brief, where somebody's looking for music, then you have to pay us €20 to submit your music to that brief. So it's basically a tax on the smaller people. Right, it's a tax on the independents, right? Dreaming that they're going to get a placement, because if they get the placement, then it's maybe 20, maybe it's €50,000 for that placement. Plus, there's broadcast royalties afterwards, which can be even more, right? So the golden ring in the sky, right? It's beautiful, and if I can only reach that, right? And so we have it so there's no barrier to entry, there's no membership fees, there's no sign-up fees. right, for what we crudely refer to as the buyers, the visual production side. They will never pay a penny for anything. And we built them the best tools in the industry by far. We've won quite a few awards on it, international awards
Mhm.
on, and so and we built it with their input. We had like over 200 people on the people, professionals in the industry, giving us input on what it should be, and we kept going back to them. So, we built this thing. What do you think? What's stupid about it? What's missing? Right? And they'd give us their input. Right? And that was kind of painful, but because it's never perfect. You ask 200 people what they think of one thing, and you get 200 different answers. So that was painful, but we listened and we worked. But it makes it so that the music supervisors can actually really search through on the independent level through our system, and they can deal directly with them, and then they build their network.
Mhm.
And this is something that is uh, empowering. A lot of other systems, they have a middleman. You put your music like these other ones I was talking about, right?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
don't deal with the music supervisor directly. You deal with the in-house team, right? And I thought, well, that's not scalable, is it? When we become the global standard, and there's 10 million of them sending stuff in, like how many people we're going to have warehouses full of people going through music and all that? Like, no, 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 no. Let's let them just deal directly. Let them build their own network, build their own relationship. Let the music supervisor get to know the indie band, get to talk to them, get to have there's a human there, get this relationship going. um, so that's one of the sides of it, but also we automated. I don't like tedium.
Mhm.
Really don't like it. If I'm when I had the boutique sync licensing agency, when a new artist would come in and they have like 5 CDs, to input that into the system, to make put on all the information about it, right? And, all the descriptive things and all the codes and everything. It was days, right? So we've automated so many elements that if I thought, and one of the initial discoveries was saying, really, you're filling out those forms? We can automate that. So we've automated all these elements. So it makes it so instead of somebody spending a day and a half filling out what's called a cue sheet at the end of a film, it's automatically done. They don't have to think about it, right? It's just there. It's done.
Yeah,
That's
make it easy. Make it easier for the customer. It always works.
Yeah, yeah, and gives them joy. So everybody in the entertainment industry, well, most people, okay, there are some accountants that just like numbers, they don't want to be creative, but most of them are creative people and they just want to be creative,
Mhm.
right? And then there's all this administrative side. So our job is to really automate that administrative side so they can just focus on the creative side.
How can you imagine your solution? I have a podcast, for example, and let's assume that sponsor stops by. I mean, Joe Rogan made a deal, I think about 200 million with Spotify,
Mhm.
and a podcaster with 200 million might want to find some title music for the podcaster, some new music. How can SyncLodge help this podcaster? What's a
Yeah, that's a great question. So you go into SyncLodge, you register as we have different account types, right? So you would register as a music supervisor or content production professional,
Mhm.
and then you say, okay, I'm going to start this project. This is what it's called. This is how this is my episode, and you search for music. You find the music. Okay, that might work. That might work. You just start listing the music in the project. You just start, and you can listen to it right inside the system, and then you click a button. It tells you who owns it,
Mhm.
and then you just reach out to them and say, this is what I'm doing. Right. This is the media. This is it's global. It's a podcast. We're having it on these platforms, and I want to use this song, and I want to use this much of it as the intro, and we're going to use it again as the outro. How much?
Okay.
Right. And I can use it forever. How much is that? And they'll tell you. Or you say, this is my budget. Can we license it for this, please? Please, please, please. Can we?
So with SyncLodge, someone producing movies or any other content where he thinks he needs some music can go to your platform
Mhm.
and get access to the global music library that's
Yes.
ready
Everything.
for licensing.
Yeah. Everything that's publicly released, we access, and we
Everything
access
that's publicly
released.
ever.
Ever released.
How do you get so much? I mean, we are talking about centuries of music.
Yes, because there are databases, things like Apple Music and Spotify and things like this
Mhm.
that store it. So we just access it. We don't store it. We store it
Okay.
just for the length of the project, and same with the data. So we have all we access all the data. So if it's such a band, this song by such a band, click a button, it tells you who the original publishers, who the original owners of it that you have to license it from, and if there's somebody in your country that is managing that for them.
Mhm.
And then you can deal directly with them. But we don't store that past the length of the project. We just access it. There's all these other databases that have it,
Mhm.
and there's two logical reasons behind that. One is if I release an album, I've got to go and put it on these different things, and I've got to register with the different databases, and also have the audio here and the audio there. Why make them come to our company and do the same thing? Why make it one more tedious thing to do? Right? Just let them do it the way they normally do it. And we access it, and also on the data side, on who actually represents it and who has authority over for sync licensing on it, that can change, and it does change. And so, if we were to store all that data, it would mean that if they changed hands, if this publishing went and got sold to this other company, if they don't let us know, then our data is out of date, right? And well, why make it so that that makes it more complicated? We just access it, and when they change hands, it's updated on these other databases, and we just access it. And makes it easy. It also makes it so it's reliable, and we don't have to manage a database. Who wants to manage a database?
That's true. Is the music industry still so complicated? I thought, I mean, when I look back to the 80s, I think we had standard records at the beginning of the 80s. Then the first technological evolution was compact discs, basically, which
Yeah.
were more reliable
Hmm.
in playing. Then we had Blu-rays, and the real disruption you mentioned it came with Napster, where
Yeah.
people started sharing music and could download single
Yeah.
songs on an MP3 player. And Steve Jobs with Apple then made the next iteration with the iPod. And I think for the consumer, from my end, from the consumer perspective, the real disruptive technology was then iTunes, where
Hmm.
for the first time I had the option to purchase single songs. So I didn't have to buy the entire compact disc.
Yeah.
When I just liked one song, I could pay one, I think it was €1 back
Yeah.
then.
Yeah. I think it was one per single
Yeah.
song. Yes.
And still, licensing is so complicated. I always thought the digital world makes everything easier, not
Well,
licensing.
but the funny thing is the opposite effect happened when we had vinyl and it wasn't digital. That was a lot simpler.
Really?
That was a lot simpler world because okay, so you have the best music supervisors had a big library of albums.
Mhm.
And they pull it out, and right on the back of the jacket, it will tell you who owned it. Right, it would tell you who it was, right, and you can just deal with them directly. As soon as it became digital, then you had these digital databases, and then you have so there's a thing called a PRO, which is a performance rights organization. Here in Austria, there's one called AKM. United States, it's ASCAP and BMI. In the UK, it's PRS for music. Right? And they have their data on the artists that they represent, the songs that they represent by those artists. And our system can see these different databases and the discrepancies and the errors going from there's a song that's registered PRS for music in the UK. That's its home base. But when it gets to AKM or when it gets to the PRO in Japan or ASCAP in the States, something happens to the data. Their databases are not aligned. They don't have a standard. And so something happens to the data, so it gets corrupted and things get missing, things get put in the wrong field. Instead of the label name, it's the band name. That's not right. Right? We see that sort of thing, right? And so it became a lot more complicated that way. And if you look on something like Spotify, you can go next to a song, there's three dots, and you can click and it says view credits is one of the options.
Mhm.
And it will tell you who the performer is. Sometimes it will tell you who the writer is. Rarely it's going to tell you who the record company is. Sometimes, but that's all it tells you. Right? That's it. And for every one of those points, there is a number that identifies them. There's a code that identifies each of those, right? And so it has had become very, very complicated that way, and it was before where a lot of the codes, it was easy access basically, and now it's a lot. It is a lot more complicated. Also, the 120, 150,000 recordings that gets put on Spotify each day,
Each
right?
day.
Each day, right? And then there was, I don't know if you've been keeping up with AI music generative systems, Udio and Sono. So no, 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 no. I think that's so funny they call it Sono. Um,
So no.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
got
yeah.
it.
Don't do that. Don't no, no. Right? I think it's funny. But they like Udio at one point they were generating over 850,000 pieces of music a day.
850,000 pieces of
Yeah.
music.
So by people using their system, going in, putting prods to make this music, and an incredible feat.
But
So it
how,
just
but how, let me, sorry for interrupting, but how
mm,
does this change the creative industry? I mean, I think uh, 40 years ago, 70s, 60s, I mean, you write songs, so you can basically, I mean, I don't know how many songs a writer can write, a songwriter or a band can produce, but probably one song per day or one song per week. And now you said you have 850,000 pieces of content, sound content, maybe not music, but maybe some sound content put out in one single day. How does it change the music industry?
well, just to unpack that a little bit. As far as writing songs, like sometimes you can write one song a day, sometimes you can write two or three a day, whether they're very good or not. I've written a lot of songs that a few days later go, yeah, that's not pretty good. Sorry. I treat them like children. You have to go away. You just go away. You're not very good. Right? But it may be one a week. So it used to be that a band would put out an album a year.
Mhm,
Right? In the '60s with the Beatles and stuff, they were sometimes they were putting out two a year.
mhm.
Right? So then that's like 12 to 24 songs in a year. Right? That was sort of the pace. There was, I think, it was, if I remember correctly, from reading, it was like maybe 30,000 in a year of releases globally.
Mhm.
Right, right, and then now, just for human generated, 120 to 150,000 a day for Spotify. Right, that's quite incredible. Um,
So it's five times the output of the 60s
five
in a
times
day.
in a day. So five times the output on a yearly output in the
Yeah,
'60s in a day. Yeah, yeah,
that's
but
impressive.
it doesn't mean it's worth listening to.
Of course.
Right. So one of the great things about technology is it made it so that I can have a laptop, and inside the laptops I've got a digital recording studio, and I can record stuff, and I can use loops, and I can do and I can make it and get an average microphone, and I can just sort of make stuff, and great for the creative process, great for the human being that's making it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is worth listening to. And back in the '60s and '70s and into the '80s too, before it got too digitized, um, there was a bar of professionalism before you could go into a studio. It cost quite a bit of money. So to actually record an album in a professional studio that you could actually compete with the rest of the world because it sounded good, the sound quality was up to a certain level, that cost a lot of money. And so you wouldn't just do it just for a whim on a weekend, just sort of, oh, I'm just going to sit in my bedroom and play some stuff and put, oh, that's kind of cool. I'll put that up on my Spotify account. Right? You wouldn't do that. There was a lot of work that went into it. I think that everything goes in waves, and the things become oversaturated, and then the attitude of humans goes in the other direction. So, like with AI, I think we are going to get more and more saturated with AI music, and then the real human creations are going to become the real treasures.
Mhm.
Like, oh, did you hear down the street? There's a person playing guitar and singing tonight. Really, real human being is playing and singing. Let's go.
They can do that.
They could, wow, a real person, right? They're singing songs. Let's go. Let's go see that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a bit of an exaggeration, but I think it's inevitable, and I think it's healthy in many ways. I
What
think,
what about the development of music? I mean, when I think more music, more content, more practice, does it automatically result in better musicians in the future? Is AI helpful for musicians to evolve as a musician, or is it more detrimental to the music industry?
There's I could argue both sides on that. There are some softwares that are out now where you don't have to play chords,
Mm.
right? It's got chords for you, and you don't have to play chord sequences. So there's software where I could just bring it up into my digital audio workstation. They're called DAWs, DAWs. But like there's Pro Tools and there's a whole bunch of them. I just bring this system up inside there, and I can just say, okay, this chord progression, I'm going to put that in that part of the song. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, I'll put a drum beat loop behind it, and then for the next part, I'm going to put this chord progression in there, and it all sounds good, like on piano or whatever sounds you want to put on it. Doesn't mean that you can do it, though, does it? It doesn't mean that you can sit in a room and there's a piano and actually play that. That is one of the things. It doesn't make you. It's not for the brain development, for the learning process of exploring life and learning something new and going, look what I can do now. Wow. A year ago, I couldn't do that. Now it's easy. And that's one of the things about learning an instrument or learn with anything like that. But instrument, I think it's very obvious, is you struggle and you struggle and you struggle to do something. And then all of a sudden you can do it and it's easy. All of a sudden it's just easy. Right. And you just think, wow, I can do that now. I can do that riff. I can do that thing, right? I can hit those notes with my voice. All of a sudden, it's just easy, and that's an amazing feeling. But if you're just dropping data in on a DAW workstation and it's okay, you didn't really make that. I hope it doesn't diminish people's desire to be honestly creative. I understand that it's just like an accounting firm that has automated the accounting system,
Mm.
right? But there's a guy in the back that really doesn't like it because he loves crunching the numbers.
But I always thought it's helpful. I mean, when I try to imagine how, for example, you said the Beatles in the 60s,
Mhm.
how they evolved, how they developed, and their output. So I can imagine when the Beatles wanted to write a song, somebody might have had an idea for a melody, and he played it on a guitar, for example,
Mhm.
and then he had to convince a drummer to invent something that matches his guitar play, and
Mhm.
then a songwriter to write some text that matches the combination of that. And there was a lot of back and forth between humans, I guess. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
imagine. I always thought artificial intelligence, I mean, it would enable basically the first person with an idea to demonstrate how this idea sounds with drums and generated text. I always thought this would be helpful for the creative process and enhance the
It,
creative process.
it is in a way. It is in a way, but there's nothing like in the same with business. There's nothing like an other perspective, right? You have magic in business. You have magic in music where the guitar player is playing this thing and the drummer plays something that the guitar player would have never thought of,
Mhm.
right? And it just works great. And
Mhm.
it just, wow, that's so cool, right? That really works. And the bass player comes in and does something in between them that the guitar player that wrote the song would have never have thought of, right? There's the classic song Hotel California by the Eagles.
Mhm.
The bass line in that, right? The writers of that in the Eagles, they never thought of that, but the bass player in the Eagles, he thought of that bass line, and it just makes the song, right? It's and so if you're dealing with AI, the thing about AI is it's always looking back. It's not looking forward. It's looking at things that have done in the past. Okay, you want to do this, and I relate it to that, so I'm going to take this thing and put it with your thing because that's what I found in the past in the data I was taught on. That's kind of boring. If everybody just started the same business over and
Mhm.
over again, right? If everybody just ran the same business over and over again, okay, you have different colored signs and you have different types of bread, but they're all bakeries. Everybody runs a bakery because, as an example, it's diversity. And there's a lot of talk about diversity, and I think diversity of perspective is the key to human ingenuity, human inspiration, human creativity. I think diversity of perspective is fundamentally needed on everything from politics to writing a song.
I would like to hear your opinion as a musician. You have a few decades of experience, if I may say so,
Mm.
without insulting you.
No, yeah, I do.
And I had asked a similar question a couple of months ago to a scientist, and I would like to hear your opinion.
Okay.
Um, Artificial intelligence looks always backwards, so it relies on data, and if the data is not there, AI is basically useless. And you mentioned that in the interaction with musicians, new content appears in people, and the bass guitar player might have an idea that the lead guitar player never had thought of, or the drummer never had thought of, and it somehow makes sense and creates something new. Your opinion as a musician, what's different with the human artificial intelligence system? Because the scientists said that
Mm.
basically we are biological computers and also doing pretty much the same like AI. What's the difference between human creativity and artificial intelligence
Well,
in music?
yeah, the question is consciousness and reflection, and you could have AI that I play a country and western thing on my guitar and I ask it to do some sort of jazz roll drum thing. That's what I want with it, right? To counter it, and you could do that, right? You could prod it to have those sort of things and see, okay, that kind of works, and I'm going to teach that to the drummer. But as far as creativity goes, where does it come from? That is a big question. Where does that spark of inspiration? Where does that thought come from? I've written many songs that I felt I didn't write; that they were just there. The song, it was just there. I'm playing my guitar and the song's there, and 4 or 5 minutes later, it's I played it for the first time. There's on one of my CDs. There's a recording that was the first time I played the song. I'd never wrote that song. I had the mic on. I was recording some stuff, and I just started playing this thing, and it came out, and there it was. Okay, thank you. Right, where does that come from? Can computers do that? Some people say in the future that they will be able to. That they're, I don't know enough about it to know, but there is something that's quite amazing of the inspiration idea, and it's not necessarily something we've been taught that we've. I read this book, and in this book it talked about these things, so now I'm going to apply that to this situation.
Mhm.
It's not really like that. It's just it's just like it's, and where does that come from? Keith Richards once said there's riff to satisfaction. And it was there, right? And he didn't write it; it was just there. And so, can machines do that? I watch movies where the machines seem to be able to do that, but those are movies, right? Can a machine create art on its own, and can it be inspired? That's a big question. I think we're going to find out. I think there's going to be claims, and I think that those at first those claims won't work, and I think it's a challenge. But I would rather the people that are working on AI just not do that, but then they'd make a lot of money.
Yeah, that's true, but it's the human experience. I think it's more impressive to see a guitar player um, who invested decades of practice into developing the skill. And I think, especially with guitar, but correct me if I'm wrong, you hear the difference between 1 year training and 50-year training.
Oh yeah, sure.
And they can do much more things, and it's pretty
Yeah.
amazing. I think, what
It's
was this?
also sorry. It's also that human interaction, like your example of watching a guitar player that's really playing the guitar. There's something in our beings that subconsciously, physically, energy wise, that interaction. I read a thing about stress and how stress is physically contagious.
Mhm.
That there's something that energy that our body puts out. That if you're a boss of a team at a company and you're stressed, it's not just the mental emotional element of them realizing the boss is stressed, and right, there's actually a physical thing that our body puts out that physically makes the other people stressed, right? And there's also on the joyous side of watching a person perform and they're feeling it, you feel it too, and it's just like this amazing thing that's hard to quantify, right? It's really hard to quantify.
Yeah, especially for business people like me. I mean, emotions make a difference in a company. It makes also a difference when the owner of the company goes into the office building in the morning where people are together and he's angry and he starts shouting at the people at the entrance. He starts shouting at everybody he sees, and then finally he close himself in the office. There's a different energy then in the building
Sure.
compared to the owner of the company who walks in happy, is charming, makes
Yeah.
compliments, is kind, and it results in a different productivity. But how can you measure that
Yeah.
in financial
Well,
terms?
yeah, well, I definitely believe in that. I definitely believe in, you can, if somebody in a company has made a mistake, right? You can frame that towards them in the communication of out of anger and you stupid idiot, what like what's wrong with you, and this is going to cost us this much money, and oh my god, you can actually frame it in a totally other way that doesn't knock them to the ground, but makes them understand that this was a mistake, right? And makes them, empowers them, teaches them a lesson, not just the boss is a jerk. I just made a mistake and the guy burnt out, flipped out on me in front of the whole team, and it was so, and don't think I can work there anymore and all that. But you can make so they learn their lesson, the whole team learns their lesson, but you're still a team, and they feel more empowered and they feel actually more inspired to work harder to make sure they don't do it again. And
Mhm.
I have seen companies, people running companies, where it was just, you know, the people that work for them didn't like the boss. And if you have that as a dynamic, then how are you going to get them to work in their prime? How are you going to get them to really put the high end output out? Right? How are you going to do that? I don't really care. The boss is a jerk, right? I'm getting paid, and this is what I'm supposed to do, and I'll do a little about 10% less than I'm supposed to do, but that's okay because he's not going to fire me. And if he does, I'll find another job because this guy's a jerk anyway. Uh, my attitude is, and going back to things we said at the beginning, is having a positive impact is very, very important on the life and the health of a company. And it's so, if it's happened to me where I've gone into a hotel and I walk into the reception, and the reception person is not very nice, and they're short with me, right? And they're whatever it is, and my thought goes to bad management. This place is managed wrong. The
Mhm.
management isn't doing a good job here. It's not this person's fault. It's the management's fault. It's the people right at the top's fault. And so for us, everybody drops the ball. Everybody makes a mistake, gets something, misunderstands something, right? But then just okay, that's a mistake, and I claim my mistakes, right? I'm the first to own it.
Mhm.
So if I've made a mistake, or maybe it's a bit of a gray area, maybe it's his mistake or my mistake, I'll own it. I'll own it. Maybe I'll say, maybe I didn't communicate it properly. That's my mistake. I'm sorry. Let's look at it. Let's fix it. Right. Let's do this. And it makes it so that on our side we have people that work Sunday nights till 11 o'clock at night, and they're getting paid a set amount per month. So they just, because they had an idea, right? Sunday afternoon, they had an idea. They go to their developer and they go and they start and they phone me up and say, "Look, I'm thinking. Hopefully, I'm not disturbing you. You're never disturbing me. What's going on?" "Well, I had this idea and I'm working on it. And what do you think? Okay, let's jump on a vid call. Show me what you're doing." Right? And just that sort of encouraging. I it's such a fundamental thing for me, though. It's like that. Like the teacher. I was talking to somebody recently about the difference between, you could be a grumpy math teacher, right? You can be in school and be a grumpy math teacher, and 2 plus 2 is 4. Learn that. You can't be a grumpy music teacher. That just doesn't work, right? Right? You have to be a nice person. You have to be encouraging. You have to be right. You have to be positive. You have to be commend them for the progress they're making and everything, and you'll get it. You'll get it. Just keep practicing. You'll get it. I know it's difficult, but you'll get it. Right? That's the best music teachers are like that, and I think that's the same way to run a company.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So basically, the leaders should learn how to play an instrument and how to teach music to improve their leadership skills.
Yeah,
Um, you mentioned before about the business side in music, and you said that there is no money in streaming for musicians. My perspective was coming from the 80s and 90s that I heard very often complaints from young people who said, I'm such a great talent. I practiced music for decades. People like when I play in clubs, and I don't get into the music industry. They are the big gatekeepers, and you also said in the 80s it was expensive to record
Mhm.
something that has quality, and you needed to invest money, and many musicians simply didn't have that. And I always heard it's hindering them in their progress, and they can't become famous because the music industry is organized the way it was in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And if you don't know the right person in the industry, the right label, you never make it. And then came Napster. You mentioned it before, and
Mhm.
I thought this would be opening creativity and opening the business potential for everybody, every musician, because they can put out their music directly to the customer. Steve Jobs also with iTunes promoted that. Just
Mhm.
upload your songs, we bring it to the customers, and you can get famous. Now in 2024, we are at the point where you, as an expert in music, say there is no business in streaming, no money in streaming, and when
Independent.
enterprise independent.
Yeah.
So it really didn't work out like
Well,
Steve
for the
Jobs
big guys,
envisioned
it
it.
did. For the big guys, it did. And for Universal, Sony, and Warner, the three
But
what's called the major companies, they're making tons of money.
but wasn't the initial intention of iTunes and Napster to disrupt their business model
Well,
and make and open basically the industry for the independent musicians?
yeah, yeah. In a way, my view on Napster was that they misjudged it. They actually looked at it upside down. They didn't really see what it was. They didn't see the potential. That what they should have done is they should have said, okay, we're going to buy that, or we're going to bring that in house, and we're going to have our own. You can come on our thing, and you can download our music.
Mhm.
Right, we're just going to do that, and maybe there's a pay tier on it, but we're releasing a new artist, new single. Everybody get it. Everybody get it. Right, let's just share it out, and then different pay tiers. Obviously, live music is a different thing. You look at Taylor Swift, the money she makes out of gigs. Right, it's incredible. It's an incredible amount of money.
Yeah.
Right, and a lot of bands now they do make the most musicians I know, that's how they make their living, is out of music, so out of live gigs. So music becomes the advertisement for it. But the problem was with when Spotify came along. That was the big change. So you had iTunes, yes, $1 or euro for a song. Okay, that can work. Right? That can work because back in the day, there's no cost involved with that. Back in the day, when it was a single in vinyl, you had to manufacture it. There was a cost in that. You had to distribute it. Then the store had to actually take a cut. And there's all this sort of stuff, and there was breakage. And what happens if they don't sell them? They've got to send them back. There's all this sort of stuff, right? There's so back then there was a lot of cost involved with the iTunes model. There's no cost involved except for what iTunes wants. iTunes wants a percentage, but for the record company, it's basically the same sort of deal as a record store. Right? It doesn't matter the outlet, but they don't have to manufacture. They don't have to ship. They just have to upload.
Mhm.
Right? It costs fractions of a penny. So that was a good model. But then Spotify came along and said, "Oh, it's free, and you can listen to all the world's music for free." That was a problem. Right? And the major record companies, they bought in. They all bought in 10% of Spotify. If I have that right, somebody might correct me on that, but that's what I heard. That they all got 10% of Spotify, and without paying for it, just be able to have their music on Spotify. Spotify did this deal with them, and the idea of it being free made it so, okay, if we have huge catalog, we have legacy artists, we have Aretha Franklin, we have the Beatles, we have all these legacy artists that we're not selling right now at all. Now all of a sudden we it's actually being listened to, and then they did a pay tier. Obviously, everybody knows that's subscription, right? You pay. I think I pay $12.99 a month for Spotify. I think that's what it is. Um, so the majority of money then goes to the majors because that's the majority of music that's being listened to. So it does work for them. But for
Mhm.
the smaller companies, it doesn't, because I'm getting 10,000 plays on a song. I released a song on Spotify, I got 10,000 plays. Okay, what is that? That's $300, right? I can't
So
I can't pay my phone bill for three over the month for my
yeah,
record company with that.
that's true. So basically, the when I try to sum it up, the idea of Spotify, like I think Spotify, when did it start? 2010, 2011,
You know,
2012,
such
something
in
like
the
that.
yeah, yeah.
That the big labels with the big catalogs said, okay, we have these superstars that sell well, so we sell their CDs, Blu-rays, whatever, or via iTunes, and then we have a lot of music on our shelves that nobody wants to listen to and nobody buys currently. So the idea was just take all this catalog and make it accessible
Hmm.
via a monthly subscription via Spotify. I just interpreted what you said, and then at least we make some money from that
Yeah.
music that nobody listens to, and that backfired then in the industry.
Well, that,
This,
that that helped. That helped a lot for the big companies that had the,
mm,
like my parents. They I remember early on they got Spotify, and my stepfather really liked it because he has quite an extensive record collection.
mm.
But with this, he has it on his phone, and he can just bring up Aretha Franklin and just play
Yep.
it. Right, right. He doesn't have to go upstairs and then sit up there. Right, he can have it anywhere. Right, he's got Blu-ray, Bluetooth speakers, and you can just play it and just switch that through. Or let's listen to whatever, right, and just play it. It's
For the consumer, it was a revelation.
it
So
was
it's
it was great, really, really convenient. But for the new generation of artists and the smaller record labels and publishing companies that don't have the legacy artists, maybe they have the longer standing independents, maybe they have one or two that go back to the 80s or 90s, artists that that could help them in that way. But generally, the ratio is very much against the smaller companies and the independent artists. They, what are you going to do? How are you going to compete with that?
I
Yeah, so
mean,
the
for the consumer, I totally understand it. When I think back to the 90s, I had these compact discs at home. Then I moved to Graz to study, and I could hear music either at home or in my apartment in Graz.
mhm,
Then Napster came out. The download process was just broken. I mean, sometimes it took hours to download one song, and
right,
iTunes changed that, and I flipped my entire music collection to iTunes. And then I was locked into the Apple system because I mean I just could play it on the iPhone
right,
and was the next generation. I always thought, okay, when I move to Samsung, I lose all my music, and this locked me to the Apple ecosystem until Spotify showed up at the scene, and I said, okay, I'm free again. I just download Spotify. I can listen to all the music via Spotify. I play this monthly subscription, and that's it. I also thought that it's helpful for young artists because they can immediately access people like me, and the algorithm makes sure that when they put something up on Spotify, that the consumer who's interested in that kind of music gets matched with them, and that doesn't seem to be the case. The big
yeah.
liberation didn't happen.
Yeah, well, the problem is with the numbers, right? If you're an unknown artist and you're in, if I'm listening to some indie rock stuff that I really like, there's millions and millions and millions of tracks that fall into that category, right? And so how do I wave my little flag in the crowd, right? How do I get it so the algorithm, there are playlists there. I don't look at a lot of the playlists. I don't really look at playlists on Spotify.
Mm.
But there is a whole thing, and I'm not sure if it's how it's changed over the last year. But it used to be that there were people who start these playlists and they promote it a lot, and then you pay them to have your song on the playlist. It's like payola for radio. You pay them to have your song on the playlist because they have all these people, and you hope that somebody's going to listen to the playlist, like your song, then go over to your artist page and listen to the rest of your stuff because they like that one song so much. But what happened was is the playlists are like miles long because they're selling the spots, so they just keep selling. Okay, yeah, okay, great. You can be on the playlist too. And people stop paying attention to who the artist is.
Mhm.
So it becomes wallpaper. So there was I think it was last summer, there was a survey done with quite a large number of people that listen to on streaming platforms to music. And they asked them in the last 3 days, I think that was the time period, how many how many hours have you spent listening to music on a streaming platform? And it was quite a large number of hours each one spent. And they say, okay, and who were the artists you listened to? And they didn't know. They didn't have a name. They didn't, maybe there was something by Taylor Swift or Beyonce, some of these big names, but the smallest stuff, they had no idea who it was. They never paid attention to it.
Yeah.
It was just playing in the background. Right? And that is a big problem. That is a big problem. How do you, so sync licensing is the thing that can actually change that, because you can get a song in a TV show and you're credited there. And with Shazam, they can just Shazam it right in the middle of the show and it tell them who the artist is. And it has a huge impact on streams. It also has a huge impact on marketing for artists. And so it's highly coveted where to get, if I can get my, Kate Bush. Did you hear about the Kate Bush phenomenon?
No.
About this? Okay, so this was, what, a year ago, year and a half ago or so. So she had basically faded away in the background. The new generation had never heard of her. All right. There's a TV series called Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Right. All right. And she had one of her songs was on it in a pivotal moment.
Mm-hmm.
Within days, it was like tens of millions of streams of that song.
Really?
Really, it totally brought her right back up. There was all of a sudden the whole new generation of people found Kate Bush, and they loved her.
Yeah,
And
Kate Bush was 80s, 90s or something.
Yeah. So she totally not, her career was basically, maybe she did. I didn't follow her, so I'm not sure what she was doing, but I expect that hopefully she was still playing and she was occasionally doing shows and little things, but only her diehard fans from the past.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody other than newer generations knew who she was, right? So you see Kate Bush on a poster. Some people go, oh, wow, Kate Bush, I'm going to go see that. Most people go, I have no idea who that is, and I don't care. Stranger Things, one song, tens of millions of streams, totally changed her, brought her right back up into the popular consciousness, right? And totally changed it. And so that is streaming for sync licensing can actually do that. And that's one of that's why also I work in it so much, because I know that if, young people, young bands, young artists, if they can get their music into these things, this is going to give them an audience. This is going to give them recognition a lot more than the noise of all the music that's put into platforms like Spotify.
Yeah, that's true. When I look at my own behavior, when I use Spotify, it's mostly in the afternoon when I work or when I write emails. I just play some soft jazz music that doesn't distract me from the process of writing emails. I have
Yeah,
no clue which artists play on that. It's just
yeah,
nice music in the background, like sitting in a cafe and
that's right.
without bothering. When a young artist, let's say young artists, I mean, I always thought that the Spotify route or YouTube route might be the automatic route to fame without having to deal with other people in between. You just upload, click, and if the music is good, you become famous. It doesn't work that way. What
Mm.
advice would you give a young artist who says, I want to become a phenomenon like Taylor Swift 10 years down the road? What's your advice to them today?
Okay, well, one thing is it's a lot of work, and be prepared for that. It's nobody gets found, and you go back to all the what are the iconic bands of the past decades. They put a lot of work in. Nobody was just like I play, and all of a sudden somebody finds me, and all of a sudden I'm a star. That has never happened.
Do you say it wasn't also easy in the 60s? So it's not
No,
just that
no,
the Beatles just popped up and
the Beatles had a very hard time with it. The Beatles played in Hamburg for a long time, right, and got
mm,
their skills together, and then they got rejected by every record label in England.
really?
Oh yeah, George Martin, their producer, was working for Polygram, and he was composing and recording orchestras. Right, that was his label, and they were closing it down. And he had a bit of time left that he could still do what he wanted. And Beatles manager Brian Epstein, after everybody else turned the Beatles down, right? Everybody did. That's one of the crazy stories, right? Brian Epstein, their Beatles manager, goes in and realizes this is about the last chance. George Martin thinks this is my last chance too, right? They're going to close me down. I got to take a risk.
Yeah.
They're nice guys. They're kind of funny and they've got pretty good songs. They play okay. Okay, let's do that. Right? You know that it was they almost didn't happen. Same with Bob Dylan. Same, you know, the Rolling Stones. But you know, the Rolling Stones is a great example of. I've asked this when I've taught at music educational institutes. I use the Rolling Stones as a question. Why do you think the Rolling Stones were successful and continue to go through for decades and decades? What do you think is the one thing that is key to that made them stand out from all the other bands? I'd ask this. And people would say, you know, they wrote great songs. No, everybody wrote great songs. There's so many great songs being written. There still are great songs being written. There are great players. There's millions of great players, right? Mick Jagger, charisma. There's so many people with charisma, right? You know, they right place at the right time. There was a lot of bands at that place at that time, right? The one thing they had going for them is Mick Jagger had a business degree. He understood business. He went to business college. He had a degree in business management. He understood it and he took it on as a business.
You say that the difference with the Rolling Stones was that one guy had a business degree and took it like a business. He developed the
Yes,
band like a business.
like a business, and dealt with the business as a business, not as I hope to get signed and I hope that somebody's going to like me for my music and I hope people love me. They had a lot of fun with it and they wanted that adoration and all of that,
Mhm.
but it was a business. He
What,
understood how to do that.
what did he do differently, in your opinion? It's not
He
just a business degree. He acted differently, I guess.
apparently he was a really hard person to negotiate with.
Mhm.
Apparently he still is. You know, he gets what he wants. And so he got great deals. And a great deal means that then you have a better share of the revenue and you have better freedoms. But a better share of the revenue then gives you longevity. Right? There's bands that you know, and it's happening now. It's happened 10 years ago. It happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Bands that were having chart-topping albums and touring, going bankrupt personally, right? Because they signed bad deals.
Mhm.
Right? And they didn't understand it. They had this idealism that, you know, it would be just great to get a record deal. Wouldn't that just be great? If that's all you want, then you get a record deal. Okay, but do you want to make money with it too? Right? Do you want to have a long, sustainable career? That's a different thing. That's a very, very different thing. It's like with any career, any type of career that you want to work in. Right? To understand what the business is, to understand the mechanics of it. That's one of the things I tell to young people is okay, you're going to learn to play the guitar or whatever your instrument is, right? But also learn the mechanics of the industry.
Mhm.
Understand how all these pieces work together, what that person does compared to what that person does, and how they relate to each other. Understand that. Really get to know that. And YouTube is full of it, right? There's so many videos that can tell you those things, right? There's so many, the information is out there, but really study it and really get to know that when you're talking to a publishing company, what they should be offering you, what is a good deal for you. And it's not just the money, it's not just the splits, it's what are they going to do? How are they going to make it so that your part of their catalog is going to actually become valuable? It's going to become a valuable intellectual property. That is so important for your long term. Right? Um, a lot of people don't do that. They just wonder. And the other boring thing of it is data. Data, 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 data. It's endless and it's boring, but do it. Make sure everything's registered. If you're releasing your own record, make sure it's properly registered. Right? And there's the two sides. One is the publishing, so the song. The other side is the master, so the sound, the recording. Make sure all that is properly registered. When you write a song with other people, and I do this, and sometimes people go, really, we're going to do that right now? That's going to sort of break up the spirit, the mood of it. And I said, well, no, it's not going to. We're just going to get it out of the way. How are we going to split the ownership on this? There's 5 of us in this room. I suggest we split it evenly. Well, we don't know who's going to write what. Well, then it becomes a competition. The more words I write, the more percentage I have on the song. No, I don't like that. Let's just split it 5 ways. We all agree on that, right? We put it down on paper. Okay, now we're going to start working. Right? And then when the song becomes a hit, that's the wrong time. A lot of bands, when the money flows, that's when they start discussing who gets what share. And
Mhm.
I've seen bands because of that they split up. Right?
Yeah.
There was a band in Canada. I won't mention their name, but they were a whole bunch of players. They were doing very, very well. They had splits of 1.375% on a song for this guy, and they had like stupidest like decimal points on percentages, right? And it was, and they ended up hating each other, and this was their whole focus. Instead of making great music, get it out of the way, right? Then move on, then start making the good music.
Yeah, make a good contract, but don't overcomplicate it. It can
Yeah,
also be detrimental. I always wondered, you mentioned, you hinted in that direction, but I remember, I mean, in the 90s, early 90s, I was working in security, and there was this Rolling Stones concert in Styria in Austria, and it was promoted as probably the last concert tour of the Rolling Stones. It was, I think, 93 or 94.
right.
Now we have 2024, and they are still playing on stage. And I always wondered, I mean, I think it's also important for business and for creating companies and successful stories. The Rolling Stones have a history from the late 60s, if I remember it right,
No,
to
mid
today,
six,
mid 60s, mid
yeah,
60s
yeah,
to today,
mm-hmm.
in more or less the same formation. So there were not many changes
Yeah.
over these decades. When we look at the decades, there was, of course, in the beginning of changes. Why did Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, it's the two names that I remember immediately,
Yeah.
why
Mm-hmm.
did they never end up fighting? I mean, I saw so many
Well, no,
bands,
they did. Oh, for
but
sure they
but
did.
but why did they not break up? What kept them together for decades?
Well, when you listen to their music, Mick Jagger or Keith Richards did a solo album called "Talks Cheap." This was in the late '80s, early '90s, and he wrote a song of the saying, "It doesn't, you don't move me anymore," and
Mm.
apparently that was to Mick Jagger, right? Um, but they moved each other at different times. They've taken time out from each other,
Mm, mm,
right? And then this new album that they have released, "Hawk Me Diamond." Well, Mick Jagger wrote a lot of that. He wrote most of that, right? And he just started sending it to Keith, and Keith started going, "This is great." Right? So it's that inspiring. It's that sort of, okay, it's the early '90s. We're millionaires. We're gazillionaires. We don't. I'm getting tired of looking at your ugly face, right? Let's just stop this. I want to do something else, right? And then something would inspire them to continue going. Right? There's bands that have never got back on that. I recently heard. I think it was yesterday. I heard this Oasis is getting back together.
mm.
Right, and that's kind of cool. Now those two brothers, they swore not never to work together again. Right, and I think time, as they say, can heal all wounds. But Mick Jagger and Keith Richards had such a great way of inspiring each other and coming up with things, and they were just a perfect match that way. And same with Ronnie Wood, the guitar player, but he came in the late '60s. Right? And then they lost. One of the things that kept him going also was Charlie Watts, the drummer, because there's no other drummer that could play like him.
Mm.
And so if I'm gonna play with Charlie, I got to play with the rest of the guys in the Stones.
Do you think that we will see such success stories? Like, I mean, Metallica is another story. They are playing
Mhm.
a very long time together. Is this still possible, or is there a completely different market?
I think it's totally possible, but I think getting back to the original deal, I think the key thing is to make sure that like you see on with Lennon McCartney and with Richards and Jagger, regardless who wrote it, they both put their names on it. They
Mhm.
both have this equal share, right? I sort of prefer the U2 model, where the four members of U2, whoever writes the song, it doesn't matter, they all get an equal split on song
Mhm.
ownership. So they all across the band, they all make the same amount of money. All right. So there's no one person's living in their parents' basement while the other person has a mansion and 50 cars. Right? They all U2, and I think that's the best model going. That okay, the bass player, Adam Clayton, he's not writing the songs, but we can't do it without him. Right? It's just like a business team, right? We can't do it without this person. And so let's make it so everybody owns an equal share. And then we have no, it's just, is it a good song? It doesn't matter who wrote it, who brought it to the band. Is it a good song? Right? And then everybody's putting everything they have into it, because like the bass player's not thinking, oh, Bono. and the Edge, they're multi millionaires, and I've got a 30,000 pound house, and it's leaking. The roof is leaking. I can't afford to fix it. Why do I? I'm in the session. Why do I care? I'm going to make these guys even more wealthy, and I'm not going to make anything. Why would I care?
Mhm.
That is not their attitude. Their attitude is we're going to make this the best we can possibly together, because we all benefit.
Mhm.
And I thought that was a brilliant thing for you two when they first started. They did that.
So the lesson for young musicians that you talked about in the last couple of minutes is, I think I remember the first one is hard work. Expect that becoming a success story like you two, Rolling Stones, Taylor Swift, it's hard work. So
I
it's
love
not
work.
it's not this sudden moment in life where you say I write one song, then I get discovered, and the rest is history, and it keeps me running for decades. So it's daily grind, daily hard work, hard grind. The second thing that you mentioned that I remember is business acumen. You need to understand business.
Hmm.
And you brought the example that Mick Jagger had that business degree and he made sure that deals are negotiated properly, that they make a fair share of the deal, that they don't get pulled over by a large label and work basically for free, sign bad deals, so that they make sufficient money to have enough runway to produce the next songs, which they
And to
can
live,
then
and to live
negotiate new deals.
comfortably, to live comfortably, what's the blues player? Oh, famous blues player. It escapes me, but a blues player that in the '90s became famous all over again. And they said he was asked, "Can you? Doesn't being rich make it so it's hard to write blues songs?" Because I can write a song better on a full stomach than an empty stomach. What are you
Mm,
talking about?
yeah.
Right. So just having that comfortability of that, not stress. We have the money to be able to move forward. We can take our time for the next thing, and independence that way. Yes. And sorry, I interrupted you.
No, no, go ahead, go ahead. No
But
problem.
that is, understanding the industry is a key thing, and understanding it's a lot of work. I have seen some artists that did have all of a sudden a takeoff song. Right? This happened. I forget the guy's name, but this happened here in Austria 3 years ago or so, and they were getting like tens of millions of streams on Spotify. And he was an independent artist, and he had a sort of an indie rock band, but the recordings were more studio produced and more drum loops and stuff. And obviously didn't understand the industry, didn't understand, and got taken advantage of.
Mm,
And the whole thing, and that can be soul crushing too. When there's the classic story of you deliver the new set of songs, we used to call it an album, right, to the record company, and they say we like these two, we don't like the other 10. Go back and write another 10 like these two.
mm.
Right? To be able to before you sign the contract, understand what the industry is and what is best for you. Sign the contract that is best for you, and let them know. There's nothing more respectful than somebody that says, "Actually, I'm not going to sign this because of this and this and this." Right? You're not going to lose the deal. You're just going to gain respect. Right?
So not agreeing to terms doesn't mean that the deal is over. It just means that people might respect the artist more
Yeah.
if he
But
negotiates.
one of the key things that businesses do this too. As soon as you have, and I've heard many stories of businesses that got bought out for an incredible amount of money from a big company because another company was talking about going to buy them, right? And the other company that bought them couldn't stand to have this other company own them, so they had to buy them themselves, right? I think Instagram was one of those. It was a stupid amount of money, and who was going to buy it instead of Facebook? Who was that? There was another big software company who was going to buy it. Anyway, so if you're talking to record companies or a publishing company, understand what they bring to the table. What is the service that they're going to give you, right? And this is very important. And how they're going to budget this. What are they going to put into it? And if you're having that conversation, go and tell other companies that you're having that conversation with this company, right? Go and tell them. Right? Don't be shy. And don't think that you're undermining this nice guy came down to our gig and he really likes us and everything, and he wants to sign us, and he's a representative of Universal here in Austria, and he wants to sign us. Go and talk to Sony. That's totally kosher. Go tell Sony we're talking to this guy at Universal. Would you like to
Mhm.
hear our music? Or would you be interested too? Come down to our show, right? And then the guy at Universal is coming down to the next show, and he sees the guy from Sony there too. right? And that makes it so, okay, they must like them. So my instincts were right, but maybe they're better than I think. Okay, well, I was just going to offer them this kind of a deal. Maybe I should offer. I wonder what they're offering them, right? And being able to, and then the other thing is, always have a lawyer, but be
Mhm.
careful where you find your lawyer, right? Make sure the lawyer isn't trying to work for the company and just trying to go, look at the deal I got you for that band, eh? Now can I come work for you? You see how smart I am? Can I come
Yeah,
work for
yeah.
you? When I was in the late '80s in the band I was in, we did one of those deals. We signed to, we did a record deal, and we trust the lawyer, and he was best friends with the record company's lawyer. They played golf on Sundays together, and he wanted to work for the record company. And when we were questioning clauses in the contract, oh no, that doesn't mean that. That's no, that's normal. That's just a normal thing. I hate the word normal. If somebody tells you about a contract that's normal, no. There's nothing normal. It's for you.
Don't worry. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about that.
Mm.
This is normal. But this clause in the beginning said we are going to get this much. Then this clause on page, it was a stupid sized document too. Like this clause on page 67 says this seems to be halving it. Oh no, that's not what that means. That's just as, but it does seem to say that. No,
Mm.
trust me. I wouldn't lead you astray. He really did. We signed a very bad deal.
Oh,
Yeah, we signed a big deal. But lesson learned, right?
yeah.
I never signed another bad deal.
Yeah, another thing that I like in deal making is when somebody suggests a term and I say, okay, let's put it in writing, and they say, you can trust us. We don't need that. We don't need to write it down. So
Right,
it's
right. And what I say to that, and this is something with in business now too, and, we are doing term sheets for with investors and NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, and all that. And I say we have to put it in writing, and they say, well, okay, but maybe we just talk through. I say, I'm not 50 anymore, right? I might not remember what you said, so let's just get it in writing so that it's clear, right? Because otherwise, and it's exactly that. If you say that you said this 2 weeks ago, and I say no, you didn't say that, then we have a problem,
mm,
right? If it's in writing, no, this is what it says. That's the deal. You can break the contract, right? And then we have a problem, right? Then obviously we're not going to work together anymore, and I'm going to take you to court, and I'm going to win, right? So what are you doing? Right? Right? But yeah, it's
I think this is an important part also for young artists. Understand the contract, ask questions, and if you're not sure that's really the right thing, ask not only one lawyer, get a second opinion.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
until you understand it, until you reach the point where you can confidently say you understand that term. And it
yeah,
doesn't mean that you will lose the deal when you negotiate. It People usually give you the time when they're really interested in doing a deal. Taking
Don't-
another week for understanding the terms, people agree to that. And if they don't agree, if they try to pressure you, there might be something a little bit off there.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And it comes with anything in life, right? If the person is really interested, then they'll be patient and they'll take the time. And if they're not, then it's probably not something you want to sign.
Mm.
And but you can play, like I said, you can play that game. If there's somebody with a bad contract, you can get other record companies to know that you're talking to this person. You don't have to tell them it's a bad contract and they're trying to get us to sign, and you can get another deal based on the fact that this other company is interested. And
Mhm.
same with publishing. Right, same with publishing. Publishing is a very, very important part of the music industry. A lot of young people don't understand it, right? And it is something that one of the things that when I teach music educational institutes is the revenue streams, and understanding that there are quite a few different revenue streams that you want to educate yourself on and you want to collect. And there's something that in music industry, like I mentioned before, the PROs, performance rights organizations, they have something that's called a black box. Spotify has a black box. Apple has a black box. ASCAP, BMI, they have black boxes. And what a black box is we have collected this money in, but we don't know who to pay it to because the data wasn't finished properly,
Mm.
right? And in 2023, the PRO in the UK, PRS for Music, their black box for just the 1 year was £425 million of money that they didn't know who to pay.
Really?
Think about that.
But
That's,
they can collect it, so they
they,
have
they
that.
collected it. They collected it because the music is registered on their thing. So it's got played somewhere. Something's happened. They've collected this. Also, they have what's called, they license out. So if I have a cafe and I'm
Mhm.
listening, there's music being played, and I have this in Vienna, then I'm paying AKM here a monthly or quarterly fee to be able to publicly perform other people's music, right?
Mhm.
That's right. So they're collecting this, but so with the black box, they don't know because the data isn't completed, and they have a mandate. They have to keep it either. It depends on the country, either 3 years or 5 years in the black box, so somebody can come knocking and say, "Do you have some money of mine?" Right? And they make a very complicated process to actually find out if your music is
Of
in this
course.
list of millions and millions of tracks. And the end of 3 or 5 years, depending on the country, they then can choose who they're going to give it to,
Mm.
right? And they generally give it to the major record companies because they think that they are the major share. They're having the biggest hits, so it's probably their money. It's not their money. 95% of the time, it's not the major's money. It's the independent artist's money. And
So
so
they must basically play it out. They must give it to someone at the end of the period. So they
and
can't keep it for themselves. But
well,
in between,
they can take their administrative costs off the top. So they can. I heard a story, and I won't say which PRO it was, but I
yeah.
heard a story that when before giving out the black box money, they got all new desks and all new computers for everyone in there that worked for them. They just refurnished the whole office buildings.
And I think there is no regulation probably for how much percentage is the maximum for administrative costs.
No, there isn't. Well, it depends on the country, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Depends on the country, but it's administrative costs, and you have to pay out everything else.
And then you have 5% interest rates back, and you can keep the money on your bank account for 5 years. It's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing, right? Yeah, yeah, and and then the other side of it is a lot of those the PROs have the major record companies on their board of directors,
Mm.
so they have a bit of a conflict of interest there. We don't want to fix the data because we don't want to educate. A lot of times, the music industry when it first started, when there was the word music and business, and these two words were put together, right? This wasn't done because somebody was sitting somewhere and listening to a musical artist and thinking they're really great and I want to help them. That
Mm.
wasn't the thought. The thought was I can make money out of this.
Mm.
That was the thought, right? And that's how the music industry started, and that's how it's mostly based. How can I make money out of it? Right? How can I profit from this person's creativity?
So, and that's why it's important for young artists to understand the data behind the music so that they get their money paid. And if the data is corrupted and is not entered right, they get nothing basically. So, and they
Yeah,
have a
yeah,
hard process to find out, and probably from an unlimited number of streaming platforms in the future, whether they are eligible for getting something. So, when
yeah.
the data is not correct. And this is where your company comes in, I guess.
Yeah, with our system, they can actually see what their data is, and we are
Okay.
building. We want to build something called the Intelligent Multi-Database Analytical System,
Mm.
IMDAS for short. And what this will do is it will access all the world's databases and show it to the person that actually owns, whether it's the recording, there's the songwriter owns the publishing, and show them the data and say, okay, for this work, these are the data sets. 60% of the databases have this information, 10 of this information, 15% of this information. Which one's correct? Right? Okay, this one's the correct data set. Okay, update it through all of them. Right? And if there's none that are correct, say, well, actually, no, that's not correct. Then fix it and update it with all of them. Right? And be able to do that. That's a bit of a hard ask because we are not only reaching in to get their data, we're also going to go in and change the data on these big organizations' databases. And that's a big ask. They don't like me that much. They will.
It's hard work.
Yeah. And there's other uh, data or revenue streams that, there's something called neighboring rights. And most artists don't know about this, but if you're the bass player on a recording and it gets played on the radio, there's
Mhm.
money that's collected for you as the bass player, as the
Mhm.
drummer, as the keyboard player. You don't have to be the songwriter, you don't, or the publisher. You don't have to collect the money from public performance. You can just be on a recording. You can just be the person that's in the back clapping, right? And there's money collected for that. Most people don't collect that money. This is billions each year that's collected globally, billions, and most people don't collect it. I know some people that are session players that this is how they make the majority of their money. They go into a session, they get paid for the session, they get paid to tour with the artist, but most of their money is through neighboring rights because they're the drummer on that recording, and every time it gets played, I make money. And if it's a top 10 hit, I'm making a lot of money. I'm buying a house.
But they must understand how to access these revenue streams. It's
Yes.
not automatic. It's nobody's knocking on the door and say, here is
No,
your check.
no.
So they need to manage the process themselves.
Yes, and know how to register, how to properly register. And this is something when I write with other people where I ask them, so where are you registered as a songwriter? Where are you registered as a instrumentalist or a singer? Right? Okay. Now I need your numbers. I need to because for every one of these registrations there is an identification number.
Mhm.
If my name is David Jones, then there's thousands of those guys, and which David Jones is going to get the money, right? So there's identification. So I need your numbers. Okay, now I'm going to register this recording. My recording. I'm going to register it, and you have to make sure. You know, I did a recording a few years ago where I said to everybody on the recording, okay, so I'm paying you for this, but you need to register for neighboring rights. What's that? Well, it's so that when I get it played in a TV show or a film, you'll make money. No, I won't. Yeah, you will. I suggest you register with PPL in the UK because they got really good tech and it's really easy to
Mhm.
register with them. But do that, register with them, right? And then when I release the music, the recordings, I'm going to list you as this person did guitar, and also the next line, this person also did backing vocals, and then another line, this person did the clap along, right? The timing clap or something, whatever their roles was, multiple roles is multiple lines, multiple claims. And went through all of that, 8-piece band, 3 people registered, the other 5 didn't, right? So the only way for me to collect those neighboring rights was to take those people off,
Mhm.
right? So otherwise it goes into the black box. There's 5 people that we don't know who to pay, so we don't pay anybody. That's the other thing. If the example of if I go to a writing session and there's 5 of us, if one person's not registered properly, the money that's collected for that song that eventually gets recorded and released, if one person is not registered properly, nobody gets paid.
Okay.
Right? That I think needs to be changed. Right? That really needs to be changed. But
Mhm.
that's how it works. Nobody gets paid. I did some songwriting with a person based here in Austria, and they were signed to Universal, and they left Universal. Universal did something. I spent years trying to fix it. There was thousands and thousands of euros sitting, waiting for me to be able to collect, and I never collected it. The time ran out, and it got paid out to Elton John or somebody, right? And because
Okay.
the record companies, there was something wrong with their registration. We tried to get them to fix it, or they didn't want to, and this person had actually left them, and so there was some sort of something going on. But
So the lesson then for the young artists is don't assume for the worst case that when you make music with other people and write songs, don't expect the worst case that nothing comes out of it. Always plan for the best case that this one song will be a hit worldwide, globally, and make sure that you are registered properly, that your data is correct, that you demand that for every song that you co-create, that
mhm,
you collect the money that's probably somewhen in the future assigned, and it can happen in 50 years, it can happen in
yeah,
5 days, it can never happen. But always assume that some money comes out of
do
it.
get used to that as a habit. Right? Get used to doing that as a habit. We wrote this new song. Okay, we're going to register it as a new song. We have these different writers. Okay, everybody's registered properly. Okay, let's register the new song. Maybe 6 months time, we're going to record it. Okay, then that recording, we'll register that recording and who played on it. Right, we'll register all that stuff. And like you said, it's very, very good advice. Don't think, okay, well, if it starts taking off, then we'll do that. Because the other side with sync licensing is if I find your music and I want to put it in my film
Mhm.
and I see it's not properly registered, that's a red flag for me, right?
Why is it
That's
why is it a red flag?
because I have to know who actually is going to get paid for it. I have to know who I have to ask permission to license it,
Mhm.
right? If there's things missing, if there's one person's registered and they have 25%, and that's all the information I can see, then there's probably another 3 people that have 25% too, and I don't know who they are, who their publishers are. that is, I'm going to have to, if I really want to use this, I'm going to have to find that. That's going to maybe take me hours.
Mhm.
And I've got another 5 songs that I like just as much, and they're all registered properly.
Yeah,
Right.
okay,
So
this
I'm
makes
just going to
sense.
figure out that other one because it's not registered properly. I'm going to focus on these other 5 songs that I like and use one of them. And it's easy for me. I know who to talk to. Right? It shows that you're professional when everything's registered properly. And then if you do start getting a record deal or a publishing deal, if you can show that everything's properly registered, they just know that you know what you're doing. So
Mhm.
their level of respect for you goes up, right? And they're going to talk to you in a different way.
So let's assume for an example, let's assume Taylor Swift comes to Vienna and her concerts gets called off and she says, okay, let's record some music here in Vienna. And she grabs 3 people from the street and say, you look like you can play the guitar and you can sing, and that's enough for me. Let's go to a studio and record 3 songs. What should these 3 people do in that situation? If they
Okay,
really are musicians and want to make money later on. So
right.
what should they demand?
If they are just on the playing side, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So they could say, okay, where is this release going to be registered?
Mm,
So she's from the United States, so it's probably going to get registered at Sound Exchange, so
mm,
organization in the United States. Okay. So then we're going to register with MCPS here in Austria,
mm,
right, as the players on this, but we're going to make sure that MCPS puts it on Sound Exchange records as well. That it's
mm.
in their data that we are, I'm the bass player on that recording, we are the players in that recording, and that makes sure that all that is done properly, right? And that my MCPS will give you a number, and that my number is also stored on Sound Exchange, right? That my identification number is also there, and you can go on the Sound Exchange database and see. You can go on there and see. Right? Um, go through that steps and being not being, oh my God, it's Taylor Swift, or this is such a great opportunity for me and I don't want to rock the boat. Show them that you know what you're doing. Don't be a pushover, right? Say,
Mm.
okay, I'm going to play on your recording. Great. Make sure we're all registered for neighboring rights. Right? Make sure we do that. Right? You know about neighboring rights. Yep. And I'm registered, and this is great. I'm happy to play, but we want to make sure that when this becomes a big hit, that I can buy my mom a new house. That would be very nice
What?
because the point is it's not Taylor Swift's money. Right? That is the point. By
Mm,
taking your share, you're not taking away from the other person.
mm.
Right?
Is this an automated process at the end of the day? I mean, can it also happen, I see it in other industries, that you sign some deals and you agree on certain fees in some events when that happen, and then the deal happens and the other party refuses and just say, okay, I don't pay you. I don't give you the money.
Well,
Um,
they're not paying you. Okay, that's the thing. The money is collected by the organization, like
mm,
some exchange in the States or MCPS here, or if it's on the publishing side, AKM here. They're collecting it, and they say, okay, there's the leader of the band, and they brought in these other musicians, right? But they're only going to pay the leader of the band his share or her share,
mhm.
right? But they pay you directly. They don't pay the leader of the band and say, okay, but divide it up by, make sure the bass player gets their share, right?
So it's not contracts between individuals, it's an organization. It's global organization that are working together
Yeah.
who make sure at the end of the day that everyone involved in the creative process gets a share
If they're
of
registered properly,
if
yes,
it is properly. Okay.
yeah, and you can't go back in like with my, if I say, well, if those guys on my band, if those other people had registered, right, and I did push them to register, and they just didn't believe me. That was a funny conversation. But if they had registered, I wouldn't be able to take them off. But the fact that they were non-entities, they
Mhm.
had no numbers, they were just a name that I put in there, then I could take them off. But once you, if you're registered as an artist, I like using bass player as an example, as the bass player, and you say you record on this album, the song, and then they release it, and that's on there. That's that, and the revenue stream goes directly to you, and they can't control it.
And this was a difference that Mick Jagger, you said, made at the Rolling Stones, that he made sure that these business aspects were handled properly as a band, and they didn't forget about it and just enjoyed making music, and
Yeah.
they just took their band like a business, like a small
Mhm.
business at the beginning. This is the
Yeah.
big difference for them.
A big difference. And but, he was very good at negotiating because he understood business and he understood it as a business. It wasn't,
Mm,
I want to just be friends with the promoter that's promoting our show in this place and so he gets us back. That wasn't it. It was, I want to make sure that we get paid our fair share from the promoter because we're the band that they're booking in here. So let's sit down, let's talk percentages. And apparently he was very, or still is, like I said, very tough that way. And when you talk to publishing deals and record deals, he was no pushover. Mick Jagger would, you know, okay, if that's your offer, well, thanks, but no thanks. We'll see you later. Right? Willing to get up and walk out of the room. And I think that is a key to a negotiation. If you are in any negotiation and you cannot afford to get up and walk out of the room, you should not be in that room.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good point.
yeah. Yeah,
It also means always maximize your options on the market. So never lock yourself into just one option, except the deal is very good and very for you, but keep it
well,
also.
yeah. Well, we're doing with SyncLodge. We're talking on a few different levels. With there's investors and there's also we're talking to enterprise clients. And I don't believe anything's real until the money's in the bank. Right? Until the money's, I don't care if the contract's signed and the handshakes. It's still not real until the money's in the bank. Right? Because what am I going to do if somebody pulls out and they say because of this, because of that? So I know we signed it, but we can't do it. Maybe we can talk about it next year. Am I going to sue them? Right? I'm not going to sue them. Right? And they know that. Right? So what am I going to do? I'm just well, hopefully they'll come back next year. No, okay. It's not real until the money's in the bank. And in the meantime, I'm not putting everything on one thing. I'm actually got quite a few in each sector of business, quite a few things going on. That if one out of one of those sectors happens, then it's really good for the company.
Mm.
Right? Like 3 or 4 sectors and 3 or 4 things in each sector and managing this. And if one of those things happen in the next 3 weeks, we're actually in a position right now like that, it's going to be great for the company. But if this guy is talking bullshit and these guys are talking bullshit, I still got quite a few options, right? I still can work it. And that's one of the things I learned with the magazine, with advertising,
Mm.
with people saying, yeah, we want the back cover for next month. You want the back cover, hold it for us. Okay, pay me and I'll hold it for you. Oh, come on, Lionel. You can,
We are
no.
friends and we know each other.
Yeah, we know each other. We've bought those half pages inside before, right?
Yeah.
I thought this is it, right? Yeah, I like you and everything, but business is business. You want the back cover. I do not hold it for anybody. I don't hold any spots in the magazine for anybody until you pay. And if you can't afford to pay now, then we can do it next month.
I think this is an important lesson when somebody in business wants something from you, say a price.
Yeah.
And if they put money down, then you give away the right. For example, in your example, it could be a reservation fee. You
Mm.
pay 20% of the total fee as a reservation fee. I can hold it for you for 2 weeks. If you don't fill up the entire amount, the final 80%, I just drop it and the next person gets it. But
Yeah,
always demand money in business.
yeah. And I get the 20% deposit, and you don't get that back. And then you're in trouble. You better really mean to do this because your boss is not going to like you for dropping 20% of this for
Yeah.
nothing. And
Yeah.
where did that money go? Right? Yeah, yeah. But with the enterprise clients that we're talking to, it is sort of there is a bit of a we have to. It's quite a bit of money that's potentially involved, and there will be okay. Let's put a deposit.
Mm.
Let's have something. You don't have to pay the whole thing up front. Let's have something that we know that this is real, and that's always the thing of is it real? And with musicians, the thing is the dream of getting the record deal, of getting the big gigs, the dream of that, and that is quickly becomes a nightmare if you don't actually have the proper deal, if you don't
Mm.
actually watch the business. And it's same with any type of business, right? If they smell it, that you don't really know what you're talking about, they'll there are bad players out there, and they will take advantage of that and say, yeah, I think we could get them for like a quarter of what we got the last guy for. I think we could. They don't know what this is worth. We could. Let's try it. Let's see what they say.
Yeah, but it's not durable at the end of the day on both sides. So it's, I mean, there are these predators, I think, in every bond, but they finally, at the end of the day, they always eat themselves up, and it doesn't work out on any side. But it's really
But yeah,
helpful understanding the business side, especially also ask for money. And I think also you mentioned Mick Jagger, and I believe when he understood business, it also meant that he's very active on the market, so that the
yeah.
bands should actively engage with venues, should actively be on the market, should actively try to promote the music and not depend on other people and hoping that the white knight in shiny armor shows up someday at the doorstep. When
They don't. And one of the things when you sign a deal, as if you're an independent artist and you sign a record deal, there's something called a signing bonus,
Mhm.
right? That's the money that's deducted from the money you will earn in the future. Remember that. If they give you €100,000 as a signing bonus, that's not a gift. And I've heard some bands relate to it that way. Well, it's great. They're going to give us 100,000, and then we got this deal. And when the record comes out, we're going to be making all this money. No, first of all, they're going to deduct the 100,000, so you're not going to make any money at first. And they're going to deduct the marketing costs. They're going to deduct the cost of the press agent, right? They're
Mhm.
going to deduct all these things from it, and then at the end, if you are big enough, there might be a little bit of money left over for you in a couple of years. Right. So I've said to some bands, if you get a signing bonus, put it in the bank. Don't party it. Don't go buy cars. Right. Don't change the way you live at all. Right. Put it in the bank. Finance the band with it.
Mhm.
Right. And if you can use that money to go into a recording studio, so the record company doesn't pay for the recording, then you own that recording. Right. So one of the rules, it's basically, unless there's a contract that says otherwise, whoever pays for the recording owns it. So I've seen some people go into a recording studio and said, "It's great. This guy's paying for me to go into the recording studio to record my songs. Isn't that wonderful, right? Right? And bring my band and we're recording and everything." That guy owns the recording. You own the
Mhm.
song still, but he owns the recording. He paid for it. You know?
Mhm.
And so, if you get a signing bonus, like the best signing bonuses are from a publisher, because that's on the songs itself, but it's got nothing. They don't have any ownership on the recording. Take that signing bonus and pay for the songs to be recorded. Go into a studio and do that, and pay for yourself to go with that money to go on the road to tour the music. Right? Use that money to actually finance your career. And the sad stories are that the singer's got a house with a swimming pool and a couple of sports cars, and then 2 years later, everything the bank's taking it all away, and
Yeah,
everybody's broke.
yeah, money vanishes quickly if you don't know how to manage it
Yeah,
and how to make more money. When we look at the career of, I mean, in the 60s, you mentioned, we talked about Beatles and Rolling Stones. So the Beatles, you said, played a lot in Hamburg, in Germany, before they found a record label. And it was basically a lucky shot on both sides. The record label was going out of business, and the Beatles didn't have anybody. So they united and created this great success story, and probably also did a lot of work on the marketing side, which back in the 60s, 70s was traditionally working through newspapers, working through traditional
yeah,
venues, working through radio stations, television stations, also probably pay them
mhm.
to be shown and promoted on their show. Now we're in 2024 and we have this big promise again from social media. How relevant, in your opinion, is social media, like being on podcasts, like being on Instagram, being on X.com, being on LinkedIn? How important is that for young artists when they want to create the next big thing like the Rolling Stones?
I think it's really very important. I think it's to combine it. It's not just one platform, but to be on multiple platforms in a managed way.
Mm,
And it's a matter of consistency. It's a matter of presence. And one of the here's a bit of a hint, a key thing is, if all you're doing is promoting yourself, you get very boring, right? It becomes, okay, this person's talking about how great they are. They're always promote other things, promote things that you believe in, promote
mm,
things that are happenings that you think are really good happenings, promote things that have nothing to do with your music, right? Become a, a personality with that has their own thoughts, and I'm not just a musician trying to get you to buy my music. That gets very boring very quickly, right? But actually going out and being on, offering to be on other people's podcasts that maybe have nothing to do with music,
mm,
right? And then promoting that, right? And before I came on here, I on LinkedIn, I shared a couple of your previous podcasts and talked about it, right? And just shared it out, right? And but I do that generally if I find something that whether I'm associated with it or not. If I think, okay, this is very cool,
But
just
but but sorry for interrupting. But how do you think this helps people? I mean, what you promote, I understand you in a way that don't go directly into hardcore selling and just promote your next record or just promote your song and say click here and you can buy there.
mhm.
Promote other things. But how does that translate in more business for the artist, in your opinion, when
But
you show yourself as a personality?
there's this the phrase influencer,
Mm,
right? If the artist can in some way become not necessarily one of these influencers that are just that's the whole thing is just to be an influencer, right? But if you can have yourself as a personality that it's like I said, you're not just selling your music, but you are selling your music, right? You are promoting your new release, but you're also talking about other things. So then people, it's a wider interest that people would actually tune into you, that people would come to your YouTube channel or see something on TikTok and go, okay, well, let me see what they're doing now, right? And follow you on Instagram and that sort of thing, because there's something more valuable in their life than just whether or not they like your music. And there's one person that I know that really their big thing is animal wellness,
mm,
right? They're a band out of Canada, and their big thing is animal wellness, and so they're talking about this. They're talking about how the statistics and how this humane society is really great because this is how they handle their animals, right? And they go by there and did a video of the people and stuff and posted that. So then all of a sudden now they have their audience is hugely broadened by people that like animals. It was
mm.
a very smart thing to do. I like this band because they really like animals and they really support these humane societies and they're actively doing this. And the music's pretty good too. I buy their albums because I like their music, but because they're great people and they're doing this. Right? That sort of element of you can call it cross pollination, right? Of just saying I'm a human being here. I have these other interests, and if you connect with those other interests, maybe you'll connect with my music too,
Mm.
right? And being able to do that, and we do that as human beings when we go on a first date, right? When we go on, I like to relate relationships to dating a lot. So when you go on a first date, you don't tell the person about the thing that you think is the most important thing about you, or that you want to just I want to get married and I want to have lots of kids, right? You don't push that part, even though maybe that's what you really want to do. You want to find
Mm.
somebody, get married, and have lots of kids. That's really what you want to do, but you don't go there. You talk about things that you like and things that you're interested in. And you get sort of some common ground with them, right? And
Mm.
it's basically the same thing, I think.
So it's basically social media, and your explanation is a step before building a relationship. So it's like the first date, it's the pre-date to the first date. So
Yeah,
it paves the way to getting to the first date where people are willing to meet the artist, and when they like what they see and when they have a picture, they are more willing to go to their concerts and say,
hmm,
"Ah, it's a great guy. He likes the same or she likes the same thing that I like. Why
yeah,
not see her or him at the concert in my
yeah.
city
That's
and
right.
join that and buy a ticket for that?"
Yeah, yeah, and having that association, right? I think this is and it's playing the long game is
Mm,
very important, right? And being like we said earlier, it's a lot of work. If you want to make it in the music industry, it's a lot of work, right? And so, why are you doing this? I've said sometimes I've talked to people, young people, and I said, so why you want to be in the music industry? Right? Why are you doing this? Is it to be famous? There's a lot easier ways to be famous. A lot easier ways, right? If is it to make money? There's a lot easier ways to make money. Invent a new salty snack, right? You could put a funny name on it and get manufactured that you can make a lot of money with salty snacks, right? It's a lot easier ways to. Why do you want to do this, right? And make sure that is because it's a lot of work, and you have to be able to. And it's the same with any business. With the business
mm.
I'm running, in the morning time, my why is right there. This is why I'm getting out of bed. This is why I'm doing it. This is why I'm pushing it. This is why I will succeed because this is important to me.
And I think the big problem with success is it's not a linear process.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work up front, and it doesn't really seem a long time that's paying off. I mean, you mentioned that the Beatles played for a long time together in
Yeah.
clubs without being properly recognized for their talent and for their
Yeah.
music. And it took them a while to get to reach this level of fame. And they didn't give up. They just kept going, kept
Yeah.
pursuing, put in the work every day, showed up, even without making a lot amount of money. And
Yeah.
probably
Oh,
you should,
you can almost no money, right? You
yeah.
can almost no money. And same with startups, same with businesses, same with anything that you want to do in your life. It's the same with a marriage, right? It takes a lot of work to keep a marriage together, right? It's dedication, and there's going to be hard times, and there's going to be times you're going to be really frustrated, and there's going to be times you're going to think, oh, it'd be so much easier if I just left this band and just played as a solo player, because there's compromises and we're having arguments over things. Those things are important. Those arguments are very, very important to funnel it down, to make it so it's the best possible music or product or business or marriage that you can possibly have. Right? And there's a Benjamin Franklin quote, which I find to be ironically frustrating, incredibly frustrating. And he said, 98% of businesses fail because they stop just before they're about to reach success. And so, how do you know that this barrier is the last one just before success? That's the frustrating thing, right? If I just go another mile, I'm sure I'll get there, right? You never know when that's going to be.
Yeah.
And so I think the key is, why are you doing it?
I think a good example for what you said is podcasting. Basically, in 2020, a lot of people through the pandemic became aware of podcasting. And a couple of weeks, I think, before the pandemic, Joe Rogan signed a deal with Spotify, 200 million. And it
Yeah.
was very appealing for many people. And say, wow, what really for a podcast? This
Mhm.
tool that everybody thought is useless, and it's just trash talking to other people, and it's not like television or radio, it's not serious. And Joe Rogan then signs a deal, 200 million. And who doesn't want to have 200 million on a bank account?
Yeah.
And in the pandemic, I think this was one of the reasons why many podcasts started, and most of them stopped after one, two, or three episodes because they actually found out it's hard work.
It's a lot of
And
work.
after the first episode, nobody shows up at their doorstep with a 200 million step. And when you look at Joe Rogan, I think he's now at episode 2,400 or 2,300 or 2,500
Yeah.
something. So he puts really, I think, since 2006 or 7, he sits down every week, 2 or 3 times, records a session, 2 to 3 hours, puts it out, and it took him, I think, 1.5 decades of consistently production of episodes without being paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then the big check came in. Is the music industry similar to that?
Yeah, I think so, very much so. It is also, honing your craft, and not, there's a whole thing about, nothing against mothers. Okay. Mothers are wonderful people. I love my mother dearly, but don't
Mhm.
listen to your mother. Your mother's going to tell you how talented you are and how great you are. All right? So like when I show SyncLodge to people, I say, look, what I want you to do is tell me what you don't like about it. If I want just compliments, I'll show it to my mother. She'll tell me how smart I am. Right? But so with songwriting, with producing, right, of not saying, it's pretty good. It's good enough. Like, good enough is crap. Right?
Mm.
Good enough is just doesn't work at all. And the competition is very high. And if you look at the people that have actually succeeded in the music industry, their line of perfection, their line of insisting that things are better. Amy Winehouse, bless her soul. Um, her first recording, they were going to put synthetic strings on it, and she just said, "There's no way." Right? If that's your attitude towards me, then I walk away from the deal. There's no way. It's real strings on my recordings. There's no way you're putting synthetic strings on my recordings. And
Mhm.
she was willing to just stand up. That is the line. Right? And obviously she was right. Very right. But having that, and I'm not saying to be a pain in the ass or anything, but have it so that this is, the only way you're going to succeed is continuing on doing it, and continue on doing it, and get better and better. And like you said about the podcast thing, your first podcast you put out and 5 people watch it, right? If you're lucky, right? And the next one, maybe there's 10. And it's like, this is going nowhere. right? It's going to take me forever to get there. But if your reason for doing it is inspiring for you, then you will get there. Right?
And you need to promote and you need to put in a lot of work. And it's not just that AI works automatically and delivers your first podcast episode to millions and billions of people.
Yeah,
It's really, I looked at a lot of careers of podcasters, and all the big podcasters today have a history of doing some sort of interview and have a history of putting in the work. And I think it's similar to Rolling Stones. They didn't just pop up one day and were the Rolling Stones. It was a process over decades to evolve and develop.
yeah. And same with Taylor Swift. Right now, she put a lot of work into it. Right. But
But what?
another thing about Taylor Swift is, her parents are lawyers, they're
Mm,
attorneys, right? And she still signed a bad deal. Her first deal wasn't a good one, and that's why she went back. She re-recorded all her previous albums because the record deal wasn't good. So she took her songs and re-recorded them, so she owned the recordings, right? And there was people in the industry that were very pissed off about that. They were very upset that she was setting a precedent. And I said, well, it sets a precedent to not sign an artist with a bad deal, right? Right? Because now you're sitting on the recordings that are worthless now because she's got these better ones that she's redone, and it's the same songs,
mm.
right? So learn that lesson, the record companies, right? That was my attitude.
What's behind the Taylor Swift phenomenon, in your opinion, as a musician?
I think
What
it's
makes
just,
her special?
I think it's being very smart. I think she's very clever. I think she works very hard.
Mm.
She does have talent, but she is, she's not the she is a co-writer on her songs, but she hooks up with some of the best pop writers in the world and country writers, and she hooks up with the best in the world. And she's also, I think, she's very clear and determined on what she wants out of the situation, out of the relationships. I think she's very, and it showed when she re-recorded her albums. When she walked out of her deal and re-recorded albums, she is, it's a matter of taking yourself. It's not like an ego of being precious and being so important and I'm the star and all that. It's not that at all. It's taking yourself seriously to the point of not letting people F with you. Right? Right? This is my life. This is, one day I'm going to die. And if I don't respect myself and respect my journey, nobody else is going to. And I've got to fight hard in this world. And people will take advantage of me. Don't let them take advantage of me. Right? Is this person taking advantage? Are you taking advantage of me? Seems like you're taking advantage of me. I'm not going to let you take advantage of me. Have that sort of attitude, right? But still balancing it with being a nice person. That's the trick.
Yeah, that's always the challenge, being hard and nice at the same time. To know, I think to understand how, I think it's understanding when to play which side of a personality, the hard one or the
Mhm.
soft one,
Yeah,
which makes a difference.
I don't think it's ever needed to get angry. I think getting angry is a loser's game. I think if something upsets you, then find out a way of communicating that without anger, and taking the assumption that if two people are dealing with something, you're one of them and there's somebody else, that you both want it to be successful,
Mm.
that you both want the relationship to last, that you both want it to become, what you both envision it to be. And then if you go to somebody instead of the anger, say, this sort of thing, I would like to talk to you about it, and it's kind of bothers me, and I'd like to just get clarity. I'd like to ask you some questions about it, just so, and just have a bit of a gentleness, but still, when it comes up, yeah, but we do, yeah. In the end, you're right. We're only paying you 3%. Well, that's not going to work, right? Because in the long run, I'm going to go broke, and how am I going to do this and that? It has to be a better deal for me. You can see that, right? And if you talk like that, the person can't deny it. If you say, "Oh, you're just ripping me off and you're a crook and everything," then the whole thing's gone. The relationship is gone, right? It's just gone. Right?
So
So
I mean, I agree to the anger part and say, I mean, anger is unnecessary emotion at the end of the day, that hardens both sides and increases the likelihood that the relationship breaks up or that the relationship doesn't form. But Do you really think, I mean, from what you said, I understood that both people are interested on creating success together and they would like to contest that. I don't think that everybody's interested in flashing a good. You said Taylor
Yeah,
Swift, for example,
yeah,
the
yeah.
example before.
Well, I
Some,
guess it depends on what is determined by success. And so my success might be different from the person across the table from me.
mm,
And having clarity on that of what are we talking about here? What would make this successful? What are we really talking about? And if that's clear, then you can say, okay, we're both working towards that goal.
mm.
That's what we're doing. And this is the same within a band, right? You know, what are we working towards? Are we just wanting to meet a bunch of girls? Is that what we're working towards, right? Or do we want to make the best music we possibly can? We want to do this, we want to do that. If that's the goal, then let's be clear on that goal. And if that's not your goal, then maybe we shouldn't work together because that's my goal. And having that sort of thing. But you're right. Clarifying what success is or what the
Mm.
goal is very important.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense what you said. So the start of a negotiation is clarifying the goal from both sides.
Yeah,
Are we working towards in the same direction?
yeah. We,
If
we call
not,
it discovery. We call it
okay.
discovery. That's what we call it. And meetings with people. Okay, let's have a discovery meeting, and we call it right that openly. Let's have a discovery meeting. We want to know more about what you want, what you're doing, and you can ask us about what we want and what we're doing. We're going to get really in the weeds with this, right?
Mm.
Really going to get clear on this. Okay, does this seem like a good thing to move forward on? Right? And if it is, okay, now we know where each other stands. Okay, let's work out the details. How are we going to do this?
And this is not helpful to jump to the commercial terms before understanding the goals on both sides.
Yeah, yeah, and it's you can take the analogy of a singer, a young girl singer, and she wants to her view is to be like another Joni Mitchell, acoustic guitar, right, and singing songs, and the record company wants her to be short shorts and tight shirts and shaking it in front of a camera, right, and that's their version of success. But unless you talk about that first, then you shouldn't move on to the terms or anything like that, because obviously the girl's going to be, no, I'm not going to dress like that. No. No. You're going to sit down with the acoustic guitar and wear loose clothing and play songs. No, we're not interested.
Mm.
That's a very basic analogy, but I think it's uh, with relationships it's very important. And me and my wife, we went through months of discovery with each other when we first met. And it was sometimes it was a little, okay, we have to talk the hard talks. Yeah.
And there is no shortcut to that process. So
No.
every new relationship needs this strategizing at the beginning. What are your goals? Where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? If we
Yeah.
make it a longer term relationship, if it's just a concert at the venue, it's probably how do you think it should look like? Is that my kind of event that I want to see in my life as a musician? Do I want to be associated with that? It's easier. But if it's a long term relationship for 5 to 10 years, there is no shortcut that you can
Yeah.
say automate this process.
Yeah. There's no shortcut, and it is also very very important. Like with business, my partners, I spent quite a bit of time with them before we actually. I met them, like our CTO. I met him, and I said, for the first while, we're not going to talk about the business. We're not going to talk about anything about business or what the idea is. Most people sit down and say, "This is what I'm going to do, and this is what and it's just. I said, let's just talk about movies and books and music, and what's your favorite movie, right, and why, right, and just get to know each other. How's your relationship with your wife,
Mm.
right? This is really important stuff, right? And if the person was to say, "Oh, she's such a rah 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 rah," and start bad mouthing the wife, then that's a huge red flag, right? And some people are not comfortable going in that place so early on, but you will go there eventually,
Mm.
right? It will become something that you have to deal with. So it's better to get it right on the table, right in the beginning, right? And that way you just, okay, this is not a good fit. And before I met the CTO that's in the company, Valentine, I talked to quite a few.
Mhm.
Right? I talked to companies that had teams. I talked to individuals. I talked to quite a few, and there was like, okay, first, second, third. No, it's not a good fit. It's just not going to work out. I couldn't see myself 10 years from now still working with this person.
I think this is one of the most important habits that distinguish successful companies from unsuccessful companies, understanding how to build relationships in a
Yeah,
way to align people with similar along similar goals. When
yeah,
they have the same values, same beliefs, similar values, similar beliefs, it's likely to work for a longer time. And if they don't do that, it made Steve Jobs, for example, Apple with Tim Cook, the hire, I think they got along very well also on a personal level. And it's in his biography that they took some time to
yeah,
discuss and to talk. And also Tim Cook declined initially the flirting process and dating process of Steve Jobs, as described in
yeah.
the biography. So,
Right, right. I haven't read that biography, but yeah, I align it on very simple terms of you're getting in a little boat together, and you're going to be rowing. First thing you have to know is where you're rowing to. If one
mm,
person wants to row over there and the other person wants to row over there, you're never going to get. You're not going to go to either place, right? Right. And then how hard are we going to row? Right? We have to row together. We have to row in time. How are we going to do this? Right? And then you can actually do it. Then you can get in the boat. Once you've figured all that out, then you can get in the boat and you can easily row together. Okay, it's never easy, but you can row together without halfway across, hitting each other with the paddles, calling each other idiots, and get out of it's my boat. You get out of it. No, it's my boat. You get out of it.
mm.
Which I've seen bands, I've seen companies, I've seen relationships all do that.
And social media can utilize this process. So people have the chance today to show their personality online
Mm-hmm.
as long as they don't fake it. I mean, there's always a chance that it's faked, but when they are just real and say, okay, these are my interests, these are my beliefs, this is what I stand for, it has the chance that it increases I would say a chance again, it increases the probability
Yeah.
that the right people meet and then they still have this dating process, but the
Mm-hmm.
chances are higher that you run through this dating process with the right people
That's
right
right.
off the bat.
It's wonderful that way. We have somebody in the company that's just this year has come in as a partner, advisor, and their shareholder. And the person's name is Sandy Kleiman.
Mm.
And Sandy is a titan in the entertainment industry, based in LA. Decades into it. Like amazing story. Right? I came across Sandy in a long form podcast, which I was just looking for a new one, and came across and this guy from the entertainment industry. Okay, I've never heard of him before. Let's see what he says saying. And in the first few minutes, to answer a question by the host, he said, "The purpose is to serve. As soon as, or is to be of service. The purpose is to be of service. As soon as you feel or think that you're more important than somebody else, you have failed as a human being."
That hard?
That's what he said. And so I
Wow.
paused the video. I went, "Whoa, who is this guy?" He's working.
Mm.
So I Wikipedia'd him and I searched him on Google, right? I spent weeks investigating Sandy. Right? I really did. I really checked to see is this a veneer? Is this something that he just puts up as a. Right? It's not a veneer. He's a wonderful, wonderful person. And after weeks of investigating him, I sent him an email, and I spent a lot of time on that email. It was 3 sentences, right? And 3 sentences spaced. Right? And I spent a lot of time on it, and I felt I'd understood him. I really wanted to get inside his head, who he was and how he worked and what his priorities were and everything. I sent him that email. He replied the same day. And this guy is he's huge. Anybody out there can look up Sandy Kleiman, Kliman.
And you work together in your company.
Now he's an advisor. He's a partner. He's
Mm.
a shareholder. He is so connected in the entertainment industry. I thought I was, but he is extremely connected. Where he was asked, we were talking about one company that I've been dealing with, and he asked me, "Who are you talking to that company?" I told him, and he said, "Well, you're talking to the knees. We need to talk to the head. The knees don't make any decisions." Right? The head of the company is a very good friend of mine. Right?
Yeah,
Stop talking
yeah,
to the
yeah,
knees.
yeah.
He's a very good friend of mine. We'll set up a meeting. Let's set up that meeting. Right? And so,
That's an important point in negotiations. That's really true. Is the person you are talking to and you're spending weeks and months to negotiate really the one that at the end of the day makes a decision? Because
yeah,
if not,
you're wasting your time.
yeah,
You're wasting your time. And chances are, if they don't make the decisions, they're not going to put their neck out to actually put this up to the person that does make the decisions. Because if it's a bad idea, it's going to come back on them. If it's a
yeah.
good idea, it's going to go on to their boss, right? It's a lose-lose situation, right? So this is,
And
yeah,
this is something also to reiterate the point with social media, because I think it's not really understood yet, especially in Austria or in Europe, uh, what's the value of social media for businesses today. And what you said before is important. Before you wanted to go into a business relationship with your advisor and partner right now in your business, you investigated this person. And social media and the internet is very helpful these days, and people
great.
use that tools. When someone has not a presence on social media and doesn't put out content, they open today a gap, because what would happen if you try to investigate a person because you think there could be business relationship and you find nothing about this person, and
Yeah,
you have five other people, to stay in your example from before, you have five other options and say, okay, I find a lot of information about them, and three of those people resonate already with me, and I have my favorite out of these five other people, and the sixth person has nothing on that, I don't know anything about that. The likelihood is very high that you never call the sixth person, even if
mm-hmm.
it's the perfect fit.
It's really do the investigations and the internet. You know, when I had my first companies, if there was the internet, that would have changed everything. I find it as a really great tool, and it's, you know, just to be able to just, and you know, it's not creepy. It's I didn't go on Sandy's like personal Facebook page or anything like that, right? But I found him in newspaper articles. I found him in different interviews. I found him, you know, on panels, on conferences, and just really listened and listened and made notes of quotes of things I liked him saying, and you know, and just sort of built this thing up, thinking, okay, I don't think this is a veneer. I think this is a real person.
Mm.
And so, and if it's real, then that's the person we need. He's the guy that we need. That's the guy. Okay, now how do I reach out to him where it's not just another email? I've really got to craft this in a very, very smart way where it just grabs and the subject grabs him. And I actually quoted him in the subject without letting it be seen as a quote,
Mm.
something that he just said in a podcast. And I just put that as the subject. And it was relatable to what we were doing.
Why did you do that? What was your expectation when you use a quote?
Because without putting quotation marks, right? It was
Mm.
just the subject and it was relatable to what we're doing because then he related to it right away.
Mm.
It's something he believed in. I wasn't trying to sell him something. I was making a statement about something that he definitely agreed with, right? And so that then he
This
opened
is
it.
this is also sound advice for startups. Before they reach out to investors, it's pretty much the same dynamic that you described. Do your research first, find out what the investors stand for, listen to their panel discussion, listen to their podcasts, and then write a personalized mail and not a standard
Yeah,
cold email template.
yeah, and don't do that. Don't do a copy and paste, and I'm going to send it out to. It's better to reach out to one or two people and really take the time and really know who they are and communicate to them. There's an old thing called "show me that you know me," right? And it's like you should be talking about them more than you're talking about you.
Mm.
Put a little bit about yourself, but talk about them. And not say it's not necessarily a praise thing, but just show them that you know them. I found it really interesting when you were on this and you said that sort of thing,
Mm. Mm.
right? And you know, show that you know them and that you there's something about them that it's not just you just throwing a wide net out and hopefully you're going to catch somebody, especially like with investors or any other business partners or business. But if you show them that you know them, and it has to be true, right? So I would much rather make connections with two people in a week than 100 people in a week because those two
Mm.
people in the week I'm going to make connections with,
I
right?
mean, if we play with what your partner said, be of service, you can also say, don't approach investors with the idea of, I want your money. Approach the investor with the idea, this is how I can help you achieve your goals.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this is why I
And I
can help
really
you.
think what you are doing with your fund or with what you've invested in the past is really cool. I think, I commend you for doing that. Blah blah blah. The reasons why, right? That sort of thing. It builds a human relationship, and it's not just sales. Nobody likes to be sold to. But
But this
I,
is
I'm sorry to say, Christian, this is wonderful to talk. Maybe we could do this again.
likewise, likewise.
But in
As
10 minutes, I've got a meeting with somebody in LA and with a couple of people in LA, and I would really like to pee in between.
yeah, it's likewise. It's great talking with you. Is there any final statement you would like to make?
Well, I'd like to say something that I hadn't planned anything, but when you said that, it just something came to mind. My brother Tom used to have a radio show on Radio Caroline, and he would say at the very end of it, he would say, "Be nice to one another."
That's a great words.
Yeah.
Lionel, thank you very much for being on the show. It was great talking to you, and let's catch up soon.
Yes. Thank you. And we'd like to have a coffee in Vienna. We're both in Vienna, so we should.
Yeah, let's do so.
Yeah.
Do
Okay.
so. Have a
Thank
great